That was a lot of circling the city to try to figure that one out. Wasn't the detour not clearly marked? Did not know that you couldn't get back on the interstate and go the other way and take the opposite exit because that was also closed. A little bit of a mess to be able to figure that one out. But you know what? We made it. We're here. I'm excited about this game. Had a Penn State fan on the bus over to the rental car station last night. Was asking me about the game, and I picked the game yesterday when I was doing the podcast, and then I'm talking to this guy about the game last night, and I literally convinced myself to go the opposite direction with this game. I think that there are about 27 ways for each team to feel like this game could go. This is not one like you and I have talked about with Notre Dame, Indiana, or some of the other games that we've seen, maybe a Texas Clemson, where one of the teams just pretty much has to do this and this, and that's the only way they can to find a way to win this game. I have a feeling that we're going to get a good one tonight because I can convince myself in a 5-minute span to go either direction and be confident in that pick of who's going to win this one.
Yeah, I think it's an execution game where there is no real clear advantage on either team, but it's really more so about execution. I mean, it usually like it's an execution game or it's a matchup game. Like it's pretty much it. Like if the teams match up pretty dang well, it comes down to execution. And that's, I think, where this game is going to be. It's not like Penn State is drastically better than Notre Dame or vice versa. They're pretty dang similar. And when you get to the end of the season, that's what it should be. Like, do you think the Detroit Lions, if they ultimately make it to the NFC Championship, are that much better last year than the San Francisco 49ers or vice versa? No, it's an execution game. Like, we have weeded out the teams with massive flaws. The teams that are remaining have a few less. And it should be pretty dang interesting, I think, here in these next 2 to 3 games. Both semifinals, I think, have a chance to be really competitive. And I think the national championship is going to be terrific. So, I think tonight will kick it off in a great way here in the first 12-team playoff.
All right, so here's what we have for you on the show today. McElroy has to get out for meetings a little bit early. We've got Stanford Steve, can't join tomorrow because he's a little bit uncertain on his travel, trying to get over to the Cotton Bowl. They don't know if they're going to go tonight or in the morning, so we'll just have him at 7:30 today. Anwar Richardson gives us some updates on Texas for that game tomorrow, today at 8:20. Wimp Sanderson at 9, and then Ben Hartsock. We haven't really talked Ohio State very much leading into this game tomorrow as well. He'll talk some Ohio State for that one. Greg and I are down here for this game, so we'll be able to get you set for it. The thing that I kept coming back to, and I keep rolling into, is being on the field pregame last week and seeing that ankle of Howard Cross and that giant air cast looking thing that he had on his ankle and seeing him go down. And I understand earlier in the week, we talked to Brian Driscoll and he said, oh, it was a cramp. I saw him try to get up. It didn't look like a cramp. But then again, I'm not saying that it definitely wasn't. It didn't look like a cramp. But I know what I saw on his ankle also. And I know he had to play the majority of that game. And you and I both know, Al Golden telling us they were basically going to rotate 3 defensive tackles. I start thinking about Penn State running that inside zone, run that outside zone. And specifically, if you run some outside zone and a couple chances to go low on these guys, not saying anything dirty, but you just got a chance to make them go to the ground, protect themselves, get back up, run east and west. That's my biggest concern with Notre Dame right now is the health up front. And then you could add into that a little bit of Xavier Watts in the shoulder. Don't know exactly how that's going to go, how that's going to be. That's my concern for this game because we know Singleton and Allen, if they get going, they can bust explosive runs. They can take over games. And then, of course, Tyler Warren would be the other part of that. But that's the thing that I kept circling back to saying, man, the more I think about it, the more confidence I'm losing in Notre Dame just being able to stop the Penn State rushing attack. Now, can they add a defender? Probably. Because nobody outside of Warren is going to garner a ton of extra attention. So you can get the extra bodies in there. But how are you going to hold up right there at the point of attack? That's what I'm most interested to see tonight in this game from that Notre Dame defensive line.
I think that's been the concern, though. Like, that was also the concern against Georgia. The question is this disruptive front with athleticism going to be able to beat up on an offensive line in Penn State that's playing their best football of late? Like, you can say what you want about their pass protection. I think their pass protection is suspect. I don't know how you feel about it, but I'm not real sold on them getting things sorted out I'm not real sold on them being able to make sure that everyone's locked up on the right guy. I'm not so sure they're going to win their one-on-ones in pass protection. I really don't think that's going to be an advantage that they are able to create. But in the run game, I think they're pretty dang good. Like, I think they do a good enough job. They got 2 big guards. I think the left tackle does a nice job. I think the right tackle's pretty athletic. I mean, I think there's a lot to like about what they've eventually now become. And don't get me wrong, the scheme helps them. But I do think the offensive line does a pretty dang good job. I do think against Notre Dame, you're going to have to hit some throws downfield. I think that goes without saying, because you cannot be one-dimensional against them, because they'll just squeeze those safeties down, and if you don't hit a couple throws downfield, you're in trouble. But I don't know, man. I don't know how you feel, but I think it's going to be a tough matchup for Notre Dame up front. Like, if Penn State plays as well as they're capable of playing in the run game, that's going to be a really tough matchup for Notre Dame.
Well, that's when Tyler Warren becomes even more dangerous. And I go back to, I think I was watching the Ohio State game last night on the plane, and you see Drew Aller just kind of every now and then pull the ball down, maybe pull his own read, or even on plays I don't think he's designed to run the football, but when he's definitive, and intentional about running the ball, he can go get you 8 yards, 4 yards at a pop, and that can be a little bit dangerous for a defense that might not be paying as much attention to it. So I'm with you. I think that's the matchup that will go very far deciding this game. Not the only one, but I think maybe the most, because the run game starts going, you give extra attention to it, and then you don't want Tyler Warren to be the guy that's leaking out somewhere else that has a step on someone and be able to do that and be able to go find extra yards. And I'm with you on the guards. Wormley, he gets on his face a little bit. Body control not as great at right guard. But Yawanye over at left guard, like, he can move people, and I've said it for a while. Center left, I'm great with on that Penn State offensive line. Right side is big, strong, but they're inconsistent, and they'll get in trouble a little bit. They were in trouble against Boise, it just didn't matter because the backs made them right. But I'm interested to see that part of this game. It's going to be a fun one, and the more I talk about it, think about it, look at it, I think we're in for a classic tonight in the Orange Bowl. I really do. I think this game is going to be competitive. I think it'll be decided by maybe an explosive play or a turnover, or similar to what we saw with Notre Dame last week, special teams being massive in this game. Those are the things that I look at when it comes down to crunch time. I mean, I think you're going to be sitting there in the fourth quarter with Sean, just waiting to see who's going to make a play to finally find a way to win this game.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to like about the matchup. I was able to go to Penn State practice yesterday. And just seeing them on the hoof, they're big, dude. I mean, they're a big team. They're a Big Ten team. You know what I mean? I mean, they kind of fit that bill. You know how Big Ten teams just look a little different? They're just bigger. They're heavier. Their offensive linemen are huge, barrel-chested. That's kind of where they're at. I mean, these guys are big. And I think when we talked about that with Georgia, like, Georgia had a massive size advantage on their offensive line against Notre Dame's defensive line. But Georgia wasn't good. I think that's like what people have a hard time with that. They're like, well, golly, I mean, Notre Dame made mincemeat of Georgia in pass protection. Like, yeah, that's because the Bulldogs aren't good. I hate to break it to you. Their O-line's not good. And they weren't good all year. They gave up how many sacks against Ole Miss? They gave up how many pressures against Ole Miss? They got beat up badly by Kentucky. Like, they got beat up many times throughout the season. So I do think that people just looked at the helmet and said, oh, well, Georgia's offensive line against Notre Dame's defensive line, that's a battle that Georgia has to win. But it was not a battle they were capable of winning. I think this offensive line for Penn State is better by a decent margin than Georgia's, frankly, from a consistency standpoint and from a commitment to running the football standpoint. And I think with their multiple tight end packages, they can secure the edge pretty well as well. So I think that's going to be a tough matchup for Notre Dame, but one that they have to neutralize to an extent. I don't think the passing attack for Penn State's going to be great against this secondary. So you have to neutralize the offensive line versus defensive line matchup as best you can. Because if they don't, that's what will lose them the game.
And we knew last week Al Golden was going to move this defense a lot, and he was going to try and stunt, whether it was going to be run, twist, pressures. Linebackers found a way to knife their way through, make plays, add pressures at different points in times. I don't think it will be as aggressive this time around. I think maybe you see a defender a little bit closer to the box that's going to help out with the run game. I don't know if he needs to be as aggressive early on, Greg, because when you get the inside-outside zone going, that's when you get caught when you're trying some of those run stunts. And if you don't get a replacement defender there in time, these backs will take it to the house immediately. It'll be over. But then you go back to the fact that this is one of the best tackling football teams I've seen all year. And they get ball carriers to the ground. They don't give up a ton of explosive plays. That is going to force Penn State to maybe have to be a little bit more patient, grind out some drives, potentially. Like, this is one of those games that I think we usually say in settings like this. Can't settle for field goals. Field goals won't win this game. I think field goals might win this game. I think points are going to be at a premium. And if you put a 10-play drive together and come away with 3 in the middle of the second, I don't think that's anything anybody's going to look at and have hard feelings about, because I don't see a ton of points in this one.
I don't know how either team is going to get to like 25. I mean, can they get there? Sure. But the way they do is by hitting a few big plays down the field. I mean, things are going to have to open up in the passing game. Because if you're expecting to hit these 60-yard runs like Penn State hit against Boise, I don't see it happening like that. They're going to have to throw it over their heads. And guess what? Georgia was able to do that a couple times. Georgia was able to take their wide receivers and run past a couple of DBs, because we know what Notre Dame wants to be defensively. They're going to be press man, deny coverage, no easy completions. If you're going to complete passes, it's going to be down the field. It's going to be behind the corners. So I think that's going to be something worth watching. You're going to have to hit some touch passes. And if you look at Drew Aller, most of his success throwing the deep ball comes between the hashes, like comes in the middle of the field, because they get those safeties to bite up and run support, and they throw posts over the top. As far as downfield throws outside the numbers, he's not quite as efficient. So I think that they'll probably try to force you to throw downfield throws outside the numbers. And if they can, you're in good shape. If they can't, it might be a little bit tricky. But yeah, I think it could become a little higher scoring, but it's going to require precision accuracy from Riley Leonard and from Drew Aller, because there's not going to be a lot of easy throws given up. And there won't be a lot of catch and runs where there's tons of space created.
Yeah, I don't think you're going to get those. One other part of this defense may not be there. I want to hit that on the other side before we welcome Stanford Steve in at 7:30. Talk about Abdul Carter. If he's there, if he's not there, does it make that much difference in this game for Penn State? Is their best defensive player, James Franklin, saying yesterday, going to try to give it a go. Didn't know if he was going to be able to give it a go. What we do know is that it's going to be cold. Maybe not as cold where Greg and I are, but back home, there where you are, going to be freezing. Don't get caught in it. Schedule your system checkup now from a Trane comfort specialist. Trane has been recognized 10 consecutive years as America's most trusted HVAC brand and our exclusive home comfort partners here at Jocks. Visit Trane.com to find a comfort specialist near you. It's hard to find a Trane. So when we come back, we'll talk a little bit about Abdul Carter, the injury updates. Greg at practice, he'll give us his thoughts on, does he need to be there for Penn State to win? How big of an impact could he have, would he have if he is out there, and at what percentage? We'll discuss all that on tonight's college football playoff semifinal matchup between Penn State and Notre Dame next on Mac and Cube in the morning. 7-8 team, Thursday, January 9th. College football playoff back in action tonight. So we will get that one. Tomorrow, we have Ohio State and Texas. What have you seen the latest as far as the weather's concerned in the Big D, Greg, as far as those two teams in the Cotton Bowl? Are we going to get a heavy impact?
Yikes. That's what I've seen.
Okay.
As far as someone that, look, I've lived in Dallas a vast majority of my adult life. I'm just telling you, if you're in Dallas and it's going to have some snow and some ice, they're saying about 1/8 of an inch of ice that could cover the roadways. Get out. Do not mess around. That place is a disaster when there's ice and snow on the ground. So do whatever you got to do, but prepare accordingly. You were there a couple years ago at the XFL event, right? When it started to ice and snow, and we had to drive to the airport, and we were fishtailing our way there.
Oh yeah.
So
I was there for the Super Bowl a couple years ago too. Well, I mean, it was more years ago, but when the ice came through, I'm kind of looking at the forecast now with the map, and the precipitation is going to be going for a little while today. So that's going to be a problem because I don't believe the temperatures are going to be climbing high enough to be able to get rid of a lot of that ice by game time. So
yeah,
as it looks like it's going to get down to 33 tonight, and then not above. It's not going to be above 34 tomorrow during the day.
Not good. Not good at all.
Even better. Okay, 32 tonight, by the way.
There you go.
And then it's a 39 tomorrow. Excuse me. That's that could be problematic. Not going to be a problem with the weather here in Miami. We mentioned Abdul Carter. We heard from James Franklin yesterday and talked about just what this player could mean in this game, G-Mac. And as I've thought about it, listen, I view him as more a nice to have than a necessarily need to have right now for this team. I just don't know if that's something that I look at and say he's going to decide the game. Could he make plays? Absolutely. But you and I don't think Notre Dame's going to sit in the pocket 25, 35 times in this game, specifically with extended drops in the pocket. So would you love his athleticism on the edge? I guess something that actually a few things that gets this defense in trouble at times. But how big of an impact could he have if he's out there? And is it a make or break for this football team having him out on the edge?
I mean, I'd love to call it a make or break. I don't know if I can go that far. I just feels a little bit hyperbolic, if I'm going to be honest. Like, I think he's a great player. I think he's capable of taking over the game. But him being there out on the edge of the line of scrimmage, to me, is helpful, but not the end of the world. Like, I actually was super impressed with how they've handled his absence at times this year. Like, I think they have depth at the position. I think they have good players. I'm not super concerned about it. Granted, always great to have them, but not the end of the world if they don't.
Yeah, it's one that I kind of view in a similar fashion. Let's flip it to the other side of the football. Talk a little Notre Dame offense as far as what has to happen in this game. When you see what this offense is, you've called 2 consecutive playoff games involving Notre Dame now. You've been around the team. You've seen the players. You obviously know what they run, how they run it. What do you think the role for Riley Leonard needs to be in this game? What is – we know kind of what he is, but what does he need to be either more or less of based on what he is in this game against Penn State for Notre Dame to get a win?
They have to take some shots. Like, I think that they know that because their defensive structure, the defensive structure that they're going to be facing with Tom Allen, there's going to be a lot of man coverage. There's going to be a lot of post-high coverage that's going to force you to be a little more aggressive through the air. Like, they're going to talk you out of running it just with their pre-snap looks and how many guys they're going to have keyed on trying to stop the run. If you're Tom Allen, the defensive coordinator for Penn State, how would you approach it? How would you structure your defense in the pre-snap? To me, it's pretty simple. Like, I'm spinning safeties down. I'm probably going to have both safeties involved until they prove that they are willing to throw it over my head. So I think it's going to be very interesting because Riley Leonard's probably going to have his best throwing game maybe of his career It doesn't mean he can't. He's really progressed and improved as a downfield thrower, but I think he's going to have to be good in that area in this game today.
Yeah, you're gonna probably have to go and get one or two, because I'm with you. Both of these teams sort of lack that guy at wide receiver that's going to command a lot of attention and maybe force your defense to be structured in a way that it's not usually, because of what they're capable of doing. They just don't. Penn State definitely doesn't have that guy. Notre Dame does, but he's maybe a little bit more of the intermediate style player that's going to concern you that way. So, number one, who can be the guy that helps you do that? And then number two, are you even going to take those chances? And I love what you said about Drew Aller too, the touch passes, because I think the more I go back and watch him from this year, man, that's where he's most effective. And just has the two throws against Boise, I don't think he's getting enough credit for. And not talking about the little floater to Tyler Warren in the middle of the end zone, but those two corner routes.
That was a great throw too.
It was a nice throw, especially when you know who you're throwing it to, because that guy's going to go get it. But those two balls in the corner of the end zone, man, like one off the back foot, I mean, he can drop it in there. And I've seen a couple others of his this year where, that little follow away jumper that he's got, that he just floats it down the field. It's super accurate for him. And I don't know, maybe against man coverage, those type of throws would be the ones that he can hit on.
Well, who his release reminds me of is Ryan Mallett. Remember Ryan Mallett from Arkansas? Like the release and the body type is similar. Like Mallett was a touch longer, but not much. I mean, Mallett was every bit of 6'7", maybe even slightly more than that. But just long and very whippy release, where you can kind of do things and adjust your arms so the ball turns over a little bit more sudden, and it's like descent on the way down is more steep. Shorter guys can't really turn it over so intensely. Now it's a little longer release, but it's very similar. If you go back and watch Ryan Mallett throw, I think if you put them side by side and change their uniforms, you would not be able to tell the difference just on the release. But yeah, he can drop it in, man. I think the first touchdown pass against Boise was a thing of beauty. He made a touchdown pass against Oregon where he was getting tackled to the ground that was off the charts good. I mean, he's a really, really good player. I think he's coming to his own. But the thing about Allard that makes him more difficult to defend is not even so much about the downfield throws, because if you're starting quarterback at this point of the season and you've made it to, championship level games, your quarterback can make the throws. It's just like he's made downfield throws this year. Like, you don't get to this point if you haven't. Because if your quarterback has massive flaws, you're probably not going to be able to get to this point of the season. It's just not. So you can make those throws. But one thing I've been very impressed with is that I think that neither team, Penn State or Notre Dame, makes a living in looking at their stat sheet, looking and feeling at the game. Their offensive coordinator, Andy Kotelnicki on Penn State side, Mike Denbrock on the Notre Dame side. They're not sitting there thinking, man, I haven't taken a shot in a quarter and a half. I need to take one. You know what I'm saying? Like, they are not going to force the issue if they don't have to. If for whatever reason their protection isn't great, they're not going to sit there and make their quarterback drop back a long time. They're not going to sit there and and if the coverage and the separation hasn't been great, they're not going to sit there and say, well, I haven't thrown it in 7 straight plays. I need to throw it now. Like, they're going to just keep doing what they do. And I think that's one thing that's really impressive about the coordinators on both sides. They're really patient, very patient coordinators in this game. And I think there's a lot to be said about that. But back to the original conversation, I think these wide receivers are actually somewhat underrated. No one's going to put them alongside what Texas has or what Ohio State has. No one's going to say that they have future first-round picks littering the roster. But I think Jordan Faison for Notre Dame's a dude. I mean, I think he's big time. He's young and maybe still a little inconsistent, but I think he's got a chance in the future to be very, very, very wealthy as a slot receiver in the NFL. He's very sudden. He's got great hands. He's really good after the catch. He can get over the defense. He can stretch you vertically from the slot. Like, he can do a lot of different things. And then on Penn State side, I think number 6 and number 5 are both very, very good. Trey Wallace is number 6. Number 5 is Amari Evans. Amari Evans kind of a one-trick pony, but that trick's pretty dang good. He's going to be behind the defense every time you throw it in his direction. No one can stay on top of him. He's got crazy speed. And I think number 6 is really, really underrated. Trey Wallace, good route runner, quick and sudden. Not a guy that you want to go up and trying to make a bunch of jump balls and contested catch situations. But I think he knows how to separate, and he knows how to create some problems for the opposing defense. He draws a lot of defensive pass interferences. He draws a bunch of holding calls. Like, I think he's a little more crafty than he's probably getting credit for.
I don't think there's any doubt about that. Definitely a guy that could help change the outcome of this game for the offense on, well, both sides, both guys that you mentioned. Faison, a Fort Lauderdale kid, too, so you know he's going to be pumped tonight to be back close to home playing in the Orange Bowl with a chance to advance to the national championship game. All right, going to go to Stanford Steve here in a few moments. We'll get his thoughts on some of the numbers for this game. Haven't really talked much of a gambling side of this game coming up tonight, so we'll do that next. Before we do, Greg, tell our listeners about Shannara Flooring.
Shannara and Fu do a great job. And if you are kind of on the cusp right now trying to figure out, all right, do we want to replace the floors this year? Is this the year that we do it? Do it. I'm telling you, man, you're going to be happy that you did. The pros at Shannara Flooring will make sure that things are really well taken care of. They're going to show up on time. They're going to be respectful of your home. They're going to do the job and get it done right in a way that you'll be proud of, because at Shannara Flooring, they understand the challenges when it comes to doing an overhaul like this around your home. Let me put your mind at ease that you don't have to worry. That's why Fu, the owner, he built his team on a foundation of trust and integrity. So if you're replacing old carpet, if you're making an upgrade, if you're adjusting what you're doing on all 3 levels of your home, 2 levels, 1 level, whatever it may be, you can rely on Fu and his team at Shannara Flooring in Homewood, because they're a preferred Shaw dealer. So when it's time for new flooring, ask yourself, call who? Call Fu. Call them direct at 205-518-6423 and see all the new styles from 2025 at ShannaraFlooring.com.
All right, which side of this game is Stanford Steve on? We'll find out next on McElroy and Kubelik in the morning. 7:33 a.m. Thursday, January 9th, right here on Jocks 94.5. I got a couple things I got to get to. I actually want to let Stanford Steve in on a couple of these. Before we do that, Georgia takes another hit to the NFL, and Ty Ingram Dawkins announcing that he is going to go to the NFL draft, which, now you're talking about Dylan Fairchild, Tate Ratledge, Mykel Williams, Arian Smith, Smile Munden, Carson Beck, Malachi Starks, add another defensive lineman to that. We talked about it yesterday, Greg. And I understand it's Kirby and the way they've recruited, but man, it's beginning to look like this is going to be a very difficult sort of rinse and repeat for Georgia going into next year.
For sure. But this is modern day football, man. This is the challenge that a lot of these programs are dealing with. Like, to the riches go the spoils. And when you win a lot of games and you have good personnel, your players are going to be coveted in the portal, and they're also going to be coveted by the NFL. So yeah, it's a tough, it's not going to be easy sledding for Georgia moving forward. I'm not saying they won't win games, not saying they can't win the Natty next year. They absolutely can, but it will be tough. That's for sure.
All right, let's welcome in Stanford Steve, and we know GMAC is brought to us each and every week by our friends at Atlas Senior Living.
Yeah, Atlas Senior Living is the best. They've done such a great job supporting the show, and they are a senior housing community serving seniors across the South with locations in Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, Kentucky, Tennessee, Mississippi, Texas, and Alabama, including in Birmingham at Monarch Grove Greystone. They're serving seniors all throughout to make sure they have exactly what they need. They're loved like their family, and you can check out more at Atlas, ATLAS, seniorliving.com. Steve, it was great seeing you last night, my friend. Hopefully you and Red did not go the distance. Did you shut it down at a reasonable hour last night?
Absolutely, Greg. It's the night before the game. We got curfew. I don't know about you guys. You guys had a crew. I can't imagine who picked up that tab. But no, we were all good. Night before the game. This is a veteran move. You know the deal.
Yeah, that's fair. But it's curfew because you played at Stanford, so you operate with the curfew on Pacific time full time. So yeah, by 10 for sure, but it's 10 o'clock Pacific, correct?
No, not true. We stay on the time zone we are in. It's amazing. I believe with game day this year, the Eastern time zone though was the least amount spent. Like we had a couple back-to-backs out west. We spent a ton of time in Central at a mountain. So yeah, it was it's a little different being here on the East Coast, but it's fired up. It sets up for an awesome day and an awesome night. I don't know how much time you guys have spent at Hard Rock since they redid it, but I think it's awesome, especially for this type of game, neutral site, two great fan bases. How much louder that place is since they put the overhangs in. It's awesome.
I'm excited to go. I've actually never been. So the old one, the new one, any of them. So I'm excited to get in there. Steve, I gotta go a little curveball here, but I want your feedback on it. Two questions for Greg. One, I never got to this. Did you watch TGL the other night, Greg? You were so excited about it. Was it good? Was it bad?
It was good once I understand what the rules were. Like, I don't really know the rules.
You hit the ball into the screen, and it tells you where it goes. That's the rules.
Yeah, but it's not really that. It's 15 holes. There's alternate shots, and then there's a little more to it than that. And then the final 6 holes, you have singles, so it's 1v1 for a point.
You mean 6 screens that you hit too? It's not actually holes that they play.
But the
final
Cole,
6
we live in a digital world.
Got it.
We live in a digital world.
Which is amazing what I'm going to bring up next, Steve, and something that we need to have a conversation about. Our guy at the security line in Shuttlesworth, Birmingham International Airport, I'm not going to say his name because I don't know if that needs to be said on air, had a great conversation with him last night when I'm checking in. Said he saw you come in the day before and had a great conversation with you about football. He had a lot of questions about the Crimson Tide. I'm just going to go ahead and throw that out there. A lot. I've never been escorted all the way down through security, like bags through the scanners and then all the way like to where my gate is, but I was, and I felt great about that. It was very safe. However, Greg, he drops on me, Steve. Greg has sort of been my travel czar for the last maybe 2 years. When we did the XFL reboot, he's like, no, it always has to be direct. It doesn't matter what airline. No, we fly in day of game. We can pull this off. We can do this. And so, like, he led me in all new directions of travel, and it was fantastic, and some of that still works for me today. Steve, he did all of this yesterday. When I walked past this gentleman, he goes, "Man, I tell you what, the one thing I can't believe about Greg is he ain't got TSA pre-check."
Wow.
And I said, "Excuse me?" And he's like, "Yeah, he's not pre-check. He didn't have it."
It's not accurate.
It's not what security at Shuttlesworth told me yesterday.
Well, yeah, on the 8:00 flight from Birmingham to Miami the other night, yes, I went through the regular security line because TSA pre-check was closed. Come
Correct.
on.
But I still
Not only do I have
went through the
pre-check,
same
I have
one, but I had
pre-check, clear, global access, whatever gets me through as fast as humanly possible. And by the way, isn't that like a HIPAA violation for him to be talking about my security preferences? What are we doing?
He didn't say anything about your ACLs. He just said that you didn't have TSA. I honestly, I didn't believe him at first, but he doubled down on it. And I was like, I'm going to have to give him hell about this on the show, because if you don't have TSA, I don't know what prehistoric times you're living in.
No, I do have a guy that did not get TSA pre-check because he accidentally had something that was he works in our business, and I won't say who it is, but he accidentally had something in his carry-on bag that you're not allowed to travel with, so he therefore lost TSA pre-check for like 5 years and was in our business. And this was before
That's
clear.
brutal. That's
Think
brutal.
about that. That is the worst thing that could possibly happen to you. It's the worst.
All right, we covered that, Steve. I guess there's nothing to say about it now since Greg's going to claim that he actually has it. But either way, all right, when
There's
you look at
nothing to
this,
claim. I'm going to start sending screenshots of my boarding passes to you. Just
There
so
you
know.
go.
all right, Steve, Notre Dame, 1.5 favorite now. This thing did move around a little bit yesterday. Do you like one side based on where it is, and do you expect any more movement before kick?
No, I think it's pretty set. You saw the late money come in on Penn State, and people that want to bet the underdog, and now it's 1.5. Projected scores around 22-21. That's the first thing I said to Greg last night. I love the under in the Notre Dame Georgia game, and I think this is going to set up the same way. I love Notre Dame's personnel on defense. I really do. I think Ace Schuler is an absolute stud. I want to see the matchups. We know they're going to play man. Greg, I would think Watts is going to go to Tyler Warren. Moore will go to Wallace if I'm thinking right. And I think Notre Dame's going to do a really good job of making Penn State very uncomfortable. And therefore, this game to me is on Drew Aller and what he does offensively. And I see Notre Dame having the advantage there. I know people have talked about the improvements and the consistency of Penn State's offensive line. But I just look at the pieces Notre Dame has, and they could frustrate Penn State all night. And on the other side, I think the patience of Denbrock is pretty impressive when you look at how they go about things. A couple scrambles from Riley Leonard, a couple of quarterback design runs, the factor of Jeremiah Love, what's he going to be? But I think Notre Dame's super comfortable in this type of game because of the way they play and relying on their defense, where I could see, Penn State getting a little antsy if it's not going right there. And how's their defense playing? Notre Dame keeps pressure on you. They got guys that can get open on the perimeter. They do a good job with the tight end. So I think it's an under game, and that's the way I look. 21 points wins the game, 23 points wins the game. That keeps it under, and that's the way I see this one going tonight.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see how the offensive and defensive lines of both teams match up. Of course, the availability of some stars is something that we'll be paying close attention to. Abdul Carter, can he go? Will he go? Jeremiah Love banged up. That right knee has kind of limited how much he's been involved the last couple weeks. Just 14 carries in the playoffs so far. So a lot to kind of keep an eye on. As far as like some player props, is there anything that kind of jumps out to you?
Yeah, I love Faison. I think he's been a kid that Riley Leonard's really found a trust with. His number's in the 40s. I believe it's 44.5 now. You can look at his over catches. I look at him, you talk about that defense and the matchup. Does Notre Dame try and go wide and get those guys running early on to see what they could do and then slice them, with some quarterback run off those jet fakes and stuff like that? But Faison's the guy to me in the pass game. When you watch Notre Dame, week in and week out, week after week, consistently, he's the guy. He's got some good wiggle. He's got some good twitch. He gets open. He catches the ball and does a lot with that, with it after, which is good. So I like Faison a lot in over catches and over yards.
Stanford Steve joining us on the Buyers Right Hotline in Miami, getting set for the Orange Bowl. You played the position, so you know it well. I have referenced Tyler Warren. Like Brock Bowers was a unicorn last year. Tyler Warren's like a unicorn with a different colored horn. Like he's also a unicorn, but just in some different ways. I know you watch him a little bit differently than we do. What can Notre Dame do? How successful can Notre Dame be in slowing him down based on what you've seen some other teams do, based on what you know he's capable of, and maybe this offense is or isn't capable of?
Again, Cole, it goes back to Notre Dame's personnel, and that's why I like it. You're Kotelnicki's creative enough; he's going to get him the ball. But what can you limit to him? Like the first touchdown against Boise State, he's a free runner, and then Aller sees him in a one-on-one, still in the back of the end zone, knowing that he's a good jump ball guy. So I look at Notre Dame and what they want to do. Can they help underneath and on top? Like I said, I believe Watts is going to be the guy when you look at how much man Notre Dame likes to play. But he'll have some help with him. I don't see him running by Xavier Watts. Watts is spectacular in what he does in quarterback in that secondary. But no, Warren, they're going to play man, but where's the help going to come from? Especially on third downs when you would think he's going to want to get the ball to him. Can they use somebody to shadow him underneath to help on the underneath stuff and around the first down sticks? But that's where I look at. Notre Dame will have a plan. Golden's been phenomenal in his approach to attacking the defense or the offenses that they played. So I think Notre Dame's very comfortable in what Penn State brings to the table on their offense.
Finally, for me, Steve, when you look at the game tomorrow night, I think everybody and their brothers on Ohio State. I get it. I'm on Texas.
Yeah.
I think everybody I think everybody's probably over. I think you're getting the value on Texas for sure. The overreaction to Ohio State's first two playoff performances, and then the reaction of Texas going to overtime against a Arizona State team where they were a 2-touchdown favorite. So I think you're getting Texas on sale. How you handicapping the one tomorrow?
I agree with you on the Texas side. They got the goods to keep it close. It sounds talking with people, Cam Williams is going to be back. I think that's huge because every person you talk to with Texas, they talk about the line of scrimmage, and you've got to be able to maintain and handle that. They play so many guys, and there's a bunch of difference makers on that defensive line. So I like Texas's matchup against Ohio State's offensive line. And then on the other side, Ohio State's defensive line has played out of their minds the last two games. Home field advantage in the cold against Tennessee, and then just bringing the wood to Oregon and really exposing right side of the line that I didn't see happening in that game. So the way it's just a dream for me because I think the world of these two play callers. I still lean to the over. I do think Texas should score on them. They have the goods with guys getting separated. You got to attack that Ohio secondary. But if I got to pick a side, I would take the points, but I like the over also because I think both teams are going to come out strong with their offense.
I think Greg and I will both be with you on the play callers too, and I just kind of wonder, the more I've been looking at it, is whoever manages misdirection best has the most success defensively in this game because, both defenses can be pretty aggressive, and both guys are obviously going to give you a lot of those eye violations.
No doubt. And when I watch Ohio State in person the last two games, just the speed and the sense of urgency they played with is not even close to what I saw. I can go back to being at the Indiana game, 0 and 6. Those guys, Simon and Styles, those guys have been on one the last couple of games, and they haven't really dialed much up. They dialed it up against Indiana, but the front four has really. Sawyer with his pregame antics against Tennessee. I don't know what he did, but he found something because he's been a different guy. And then they bring in, 97 and 92. Those kids have done a good job of affecting the quarterback. But again, you got Sark on the other side, the misdirection, the creativity. I can't wait to see how that matches up.
It's going to be great. Steve, we appreciate the time. Have fun. I'll see you out there at the game today. And be safe heading over to Dallas tomorrow. Hope you're able to get in.
Yeah, Cole, let's get taped up like 2 hours pregame. 2 hours to get ankles. And
Oh,
just
actually,
think
I'm beating Greg today. I'm going to the stadium at 1:30. So I actually I feel very McElroyish today.
Got him.
We'll be there. We'll be
Steve,
there.
what time is the game day camera meeting today? 9?
9:30, buddy.
Okay, get there.
9:30.
Get there early. You should probably be there at 7:30 just to make sure.
Well, you were always operating on Central Time. I know that, but we're on Eastern Time. We will have a catered meal, so come on down.
All right, there you go. All right, Stanford Steve joining us on the Buyers Right Hotline. Thanks to our friends at Atlas Senior Living. Haven't had many conversations about the numbers on this game. We're going to do that across the course of the show today. Anwar Richardson with us next at 8:20, but we'll get to a top three right after this on McElroy and Kublik in the morning. (8:52 a.m. where I am, 7:52 a.m. where you are, Thursday, January 9th. Going to get to our top three here in just a moment. Nebraska gets a commitment from former Alabama offensive tackle Elijah Pritchett, so they'll look to bolster their offensive line and add some protection for Dylan Raiola in the upcoming season. Pritchett, a lot of ability, ton of talent, struggled at times, consistency, not a strength. We'll see if that can change up in Lincoln. Before we get to our top three, I want to tell you about your CBD store. If you're looking products to just help you better your daily routine, skincare, gut health, they can help you with that. Better night's sleep, they have products that can help you there. Multiple products that are going to give you different feelings when you're going to sleep and be able to help you sleep better. More focused throughout the course of the day, they can help you with that. At the largest brick and mortar CBD retailer in the world, arthritis, anxiety for you or your pet, They are products that can help you there. Different pet treats for that anxiety, that arthritis, skin care for your pets, gut health. Our dog has skin care every time the weather starts to change issues, and we are loading her up on those treats from your CBD store every time it begins to happen and she breaks out. So they can help you with that, help you with a lot of different things. Go by one of their 3 locations, Highway 280 by Bailey Brothers, 150 by the Cajun Cleaver, Trustful just off 459, your CBD store where good health gets home. Can you squeeze in a top 3 before the break, Damian?
Yeah, I should be able to. What are your top 3 college football playoff semifinal games in the past decade?
I just literally, there's no way I can even begin to think about what those were. I don't know who they were. I don't know what they were. I'm just trying to think back. Like, I mean, Bama Ohio State was a semifinal, I think. Was one of the Alabama Clemson games a semifinal? I mean, Clemson worked Notre Dame, Oregon worked Florida State.
Yep, that was the first one.
That Ohio State Clemson game was pretty good. I think that was in New Orleans, and Ohio State won that game. That was 20, I think, when they'd go play Alabama and Bama would smash them. Who did LSU play in the semifinals?
Oklahoma.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
They beat the brakes off.
Walked through that team. Was Oklahoma, Georgia a semifinal?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, that's one of mine. Yeah.
Shoot, that's got to be number 1.
Rose Bowl. Yeah.
Just trying to continue to roll through some of the others that we had here. Bama Cincy, no, that couldn't have been it.
Last year's, or not last year, a couple years ago, Georgia and Ohio State.
Yep.
The missed kick.
That was a great one.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, I mean, hell, I was on the call for TCU Michigan that year. That might be 2 and 3, both of those games.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'll go 1, that Rose Bowl with Georgia, Oklahoma, and 2, 3, that Ohio State, Georgia game, and then TCU and Michigan. That was an awesome game.
Ooh.
Yeah, it was. John?
I think I would put the Ohio State Georgia game ahead of the OU Rose Bowl game. But I would put probably TCU Michigan in there because that was unexpectedly good.
Yep.
At least close, or not good, more so at least competitive and close.
Yeah.
But yeah, good.
Yeah, number 3 for me, I got Michigan TCU. Number 2, I had that Ohio State Clemson matchup in the Fiesta Bowl and went down to when Justin Fields threw the interception.
Yeah.
And number 1, the first one, of course, Oregon beating up on Florida State because of the Flying Hawaiian, the Heisman Trophy winner Marcus Mariota hung 59 points on Florida State. That was the fall of the Florida State dynasty from that point forward. And then
It's not often you get backwards passes for touchdowns for the other team, but we got it in that one. Well, we got it in. I didn't think we would get that in that short amount of time, but we were able to make it. So an update on Alabama hoops, the transfer portal, and more when we come back right here on McElroy and Kubick in the morning as we continue a Max Ball Thursday diving into the college football playoff semifinals. All right, welcome back in. McElroy and Kublik in the morning. Thursday, January 9th, right here on Jocks 94.5. It is a non-monotone Thursday on WJOX. You can watch online, YouTube for free. Search WJOX 945. Always tune into the show that way. JocksFM.com app is in your app store. If you also are heading down south towards Montgomery, Sports Radio 740. And if you're heading north, which based on what the weather's looking like, you should probably go ahead and do that in a hurry. And you can listen on Talk Radio 730, 103.9 FM, The Yump. So I flew late last night, John. What's the latest kind of on the weather, the feel around the building, people you're talking to in town? What are we thinking here?
It looks
are we
like
scared? Are we nervous?
We're less nervous now, or at least for the Birmingham-ish area, right in the over the mountain area. It looks like north of the junction is probably going to that's probably the line where whatever happens overnight is going to be snow, sleet, whatever. Like around here in south should be, if not above freezing, at least it shouldn't be as arduous to drive in the morning as of now. Now it looks like they maybe kind of lessened the impact because it felt like 24 hours ago, when Span was on and saying it was like, all right, we're probably going to get hit with something. But now it feels like, okay, either the line's going a little bit north of us or the temperature will be higher, maybe a combination of both. So as of now, it may not be so bad in the Birmingham-ish and south area.
Okay. So looking like, you go ahead and call it right now. McElroy's flying into Atlanta at like 6 a.m. tomorrow.
Okay.
I'm flying home tomorrow afternoon. We're supposed to land around 5.
Okay.
Who has more travel difficulties?
Greg.
Because he is awful confident that that's going to be the opposite.
Oh, we after the show ended, Damian and I were in Haney's office, and we were talking about the show, and he said, Greg think he's going to get in easy? I was like, yeah, I don't think he understood what we were trying to tell him yesterday, and that, hey, man, you may want to look at stuff like, what are you talking about? My 1 o'clock flight will be fine. It ain't the 1 o'clock flight you should be worried about, Playboy. It's the early one.
I will say if there's an airport, well, I mean, obviously, if you're talking about O'Hare or LaGuardia, they can manage the cold weather a little bit better. But I do think that when you're talking about flying into Hartsfield, they're probably going to be able to manage that a little bit better than Shuttlesworth. But we'll see. I don't know. I am interested from our listeners though. 800-239-9569 if you want to get in. 800-239-WJOX. You can tweet into the show at Mac and Cube. What is your interest level tonight? Because I think there are certain people that have sort of been just turned off by this college football playoff for multiple reasons, whether it is the teams that got in, whether it's just their team not being in, whether it is the blowouts that we had in early rounds, because I'm not as confident in that Texas and Ohio State will be a competitive game, a good game, potentially a classic. But I feel like Penn State, Notre Dame, it's going to be tough for that one to let us down. Now, there are ways that I think Texas can be competitive and potentially win that game against Ohio State tomorrow. But I'm really confident this one's going to be good. So are you locked into this game? Are you dialed into this game? Are you interested in this game? Do you care about this game? Is this a game that maybe you put McAfee's alternate cast on and say, you know what, it's still football, but I don't really need to hear Sean and Greg being all serious? Like, I'm like, what is the level of interest for people in Birmingham and other places that are listening online, watching on YouTube or on the app in this game tonight? Because these are two massive brands historically. I mean, Notre Dame is one of the brands in college football. Penn State had a run of dominance and has been a traditional power for a long time. Now, they've had maybe bigger dips than some of the other traditional powers have had at times. But James has had this thing close now for multiple years. And I mean, I saw 3 Penn State fans on the plane coming down here from Birmingham last night. One guy in a super sweet, like white, I think it was probably like an homage retro, almost looked like an old school starter jacket, Penn State jacket. I was like, man, that's a good looking jacket right there. Okay. It was pretty sweet. But I'm interested in the people's interest level in this game. You hit us up on the Buyers Right hotline, 800-239-9569. Maybe it's because I had the Notre Dame game last week, and I'm going to be into every game that's on anyway. Like, I just want live tackle football. I don't really often care who's involved. This is, of course, for a trip to the national championship game, so there's a lot on the line. It gives you a lot of reasons to watch it. this also is a team that's involved in Notre Dame that is easy to love to hate. They have been the heel of college football in a lot of instances, whether it's what you heard James Franklin talking about yesterday, not being a part of a conference, revenue distribution that way, whether it is, being able to work their way into the college football playoff, not being a part of a conference, whether it's how they schedule, whether it's wins that they got a long time ago, certain players, whatever that is. Notre Dame is one of those teams, they're kind of one of the Floyd Mayweathers of college football. You kind of love them or hate them. Now, I do think that there are other aspects involved that certain people have either an affiliation or an appreciation for. Obviously, the Catholicism part of it, that a lot of people are just going to say, yeah, that was one that I rooted for on the side always. But I just want to know where people are. Maybe it's James Franklin, and people want to see him lose because he, although sometimes likable, a lot of times not likable. Just want to know where people are on this game and what you want to see, what your interest level is. Why you want to tune in other than the fact that it's live tackle football, which is going to reel me in each and every time. Notre Dame's won 12 straight games overall since they lost to Northern Illinois. Longest active win streak in FBS. That in and of itself just kind of wild to think about when I can remember being on the field in Norman, Oklahoma, watching the end of that game on the big board and just thinking, man, that's it. Notre Dame is out. They're done. I was standing there with Gabe Eichert and Chris Plank, who do sideline for Oklahoma football broadcasts. We've had them both on the show plenty of times. And the three of us are sitting there saying, can you believe it? It's like week 3 and Notre Dame's done. You can remove them from the pack. We can scratch their name off the list. Now let's move forward and talk about who's going to be competing for a national championship. And here they are in the semifinal against Penn State with an opportunity to go to the national championship game. And then when you put on top of that, some of the offensive line injuries they had in camp, I can remember having Pete Sampson on saying, is this team done? I mean, you lose 2 tackles where you just had Joe Alt go early in the draft. And how big of an issue is that going to be? Is your team going to be able to overcome that? Not real sure if any of us thought that was going to be the case. Then you lose your best corner, first quarter of the season. They've overcome a lot. It's been a pretty cool trip to think about Notre Dame being here, how they've gotten here, and why. 9 consecutive games the Irish have won by 10 or more points, by the way. Which is something on that streak that I don't think a lot of people would know or believe just because they have this sort of grinded out style of demeanor that people look at as, a special team score, defensive score. That's why they win low scoring games. 9 straight by 10 or more points. That's their longest streak since 1948 when Frank Leahy won his 4th and final national championship at Notre Dame. 6-0 versus ranked teams this season, the Irish are. It's tied for the most ranked wins in a season in poll era and since 1989. So since last year, they've won 8 consecutive games against ranked opponents. A 9th would tie the program's longest streak that was 88 and 89. So historically, Notre Dame doing some things of significance that I don't really feel like are being discussed this year because this doesn't feel like one of those immovable object football teams. It doesn't feel like one of those just overpower you, nothing you can do about it, just going to knock you off the field style football teams. But the thing that I love about Notre Dame is they are just that. They are a team, and the coordinators are on the same page with the head coach. They understand how to play for one another. They know how to assist the other side of the football, and they do it with a lot of old school football ways. I mean, they tackle, they cover. They might not be the most dominant blockers up front, but they know how to get you covered up, and technique and fundamentals are pretty solid. They're a good effort team pretty much all around. There's not a lot of guys that you'll watch on tape and say, oh, that was a loaf or that didn't look good. They don't have a lot of those dudes. Now, they also don't have a lot of guys that can just wow you with their speed and athleticism. A couple they do, but not a ton. And so I think that's just what makes them, for me at least, fun to watch. I think this game is going to have a lot of old school feel. I think there's going to be a grinded out style to this game. I think it's going to be one where you're going to be trading a lot of paint, a lot of physicality, a lot of big hits. And like I said earlier with Greg, I think points are coming at a premium. So I'm interested with you, John, just watching this game tonight. I know you're going to watch it, but like, what's the interest level? Is it light? Is it just kind of, I'll have it on, be doing some other stuff? Like, is there a part of it you're dialed into? What do you like? What do you want to see in this game tonight?
There's more interest in the other game. So if, I know Friday we'd have TDs, but if I was doing TDs, it would be the other one over this one. Yes, I'm going to watch it. Yes, it's tackle football. Yes, it's a semifinal, but I'm more intrigued by the matchup and the potential of what could happen in the other game than this one. So of the two, this is the lesser of the two. That being said, maybe my the lack of enthusiasm I have for this as opposed to the other one is because somewhere in the back of my mind, I just wonder if James Franklin's going to mess the bed again in a big game, because you could argue that he hadn't really been tested and hadn't technically he has, but hadn't felt like he really faced a top 10 team in the postseason, and now it looks like he's going to. And if this game were to end up like most of the other ones have, as he 1-16, 1-17, or whatever, 3-17, I think, or 3-18 now after the Big Ten loss, I wouldn't be surprised if it gets lopsided. But I do think that both of these teams complement each other, or more so, they will be able to stifle each other to make a good and entertaining game. And I think that may be another reason why a lot of people aren't as enamored with this potential matchup, because it looks like this is going to be a defensive struggle. There's not going to be a lot of points, so it could be deemed a little more boring. But I don't mind those. I think a defensive struggle is really good and intriguing to watch. So, yeah, I'm going to be dialed in. But you give me one of these games to watch, I would take the other one.
Yeah, I think there's a lot more potential for excitement in Texas and Ohio State, just with the weapons involved. I mean, hell, just the receiving course that you're going to get in that game. Then you go maybe tight ends, edge defenders, quarterbacks, running backs, especially. Like there's a lot more wow factor in that game. But if you just talk like football games in their totality, points at a premium, special teams mattering, line of scrimmage is going to decide the portion of the game, large portion of the game, I think this one's going to have it, and for a lot of different reasons. So, Damien, your interest level tonight, like where are you just on this game, and what excites you, what you love, what you want to see from it, how dialed in you'll be to it, and what part will you be most dialed into?
Yeah, man, I'm going to be locked in, because I think that for both teams, you're kind of rewriting a narrative. For Notre Dame, it's always been, when they find themselves in these kind of positions, they fall flat on their face. And to me, this is a completely different Notre Dame program now with Marcus Freeman at the helm. And for James Franklin, can you finally win a big one? And technically, the past two playoff teams, last two playoff games, no matter who you've played, you've won two big games to find yourself in a position to win to play for a national title. And I like the styles. Like, it's going to be a real fist fight. And for, some of the older people that, have such an issue with the way college football is and it's so spread out, well, you're going to get a fight. You're going to get a physical fight from both sides, because they both want to run the football. It's old school. It's going to be physical. And they're going, like you said, they're going to be trading some paint out there. So I'm pretty excited on just the physicality that we're going to see from this ball game.
And that's one of the other parts of this is I think people look at James Franklin and say, yeah, he can't win the big one. And that's been his mantra. Then you begin to think about, if you were to fast forward here, and we'll have time to talk about it if it takes place, but Penn State wins this game, they get to go play for a national championship, and all of a sudden they see Ohio State. And that's been that sort of insurmountable wall for James Franklin. And now he looks at it as, wow, this could be my best shot ever. This might be my only shot to go get a national championship. And you throw that team in front of me again. Oh, and they're playing the best football they've played in like 4 years at the same time. So I think that's just one part of it that makes it a little bit more intriguing. It is games like this that there's a bit of a stigma on top of Franklin that he can't go win these games. And he's not that guy that's going to be able to find a way to get over the hump. Now, they did it a little bit this year, but still went down to Ohio State with an opportunity to hold on to that game and go get that game late. So I just think it's one thing that adds to the dynamic here of what makes this game interesting. And it is going to be a heavyweight fight. It is going to be a physical game. It is going to be a slobber knocker slugfest. And that's a portion of it that I think I like. I don't want the same style football game each and every week. And oftentimes we talk about contrast in style games. There's a lot about these two teams that it's not a contrast in style. They mirror one another in a lot of areas, and I think that's going to make it a cool one tonight. So you guys keep coming in via Twitter. A couple of folks chiming in, letting us know how they feel about this game tonight. Golf and Moose tweets in, only so much football we get to watch in a lifetime. No reason to miss out on a college football playoff game. I'll be watching Go Knits.
Okay. Knits?
I haven't heard that one.
They never done that, but that feels new.
Godfather of Soul tweets in, Texas is a paper tiger. Easy schedule comes to an end. Can't beat the big guys.
Whoa. Okay.
Beat the ACC champions, didn't they?
Last I checked.
Royal Pain tweets in, I feel about this expanded playoff like I did about a family Christmas cruise. Built up over a long time, and when it got here, it was fun and a great experience, but maybe it didn't live up to how I built it up in my mind. Santa has trouble finding a chimney on a cruise ship. I mean, cruise ships have pools and water slides and hot tubs and roller coasters. How can they not have a chimney?
Even so, there's so much open air. Why he can just walk in the front door.
Let's figure that out. I mean,
apartments don't have
be-
chimneys, but Santa's finds a way in.
That's fair. It's totally fair. So, like you, Dan Strickland tweets in, Q, I'm assuming you've seen these in stores. Yeah, he has a picture of the Pop-Tarts Krispy Kremes, which listener and Steven actually sent us some earlier in the week. So we did get the picture out of those. And the one that I tried, I believe it
The
was
strawberry one?
the strawberry one's the one that I tried. It was
Yeah.
it was it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, Molly and I
Yeah.
had the other two, and they are well worth the purchase.
Yeah, it was a solid taste. I don't think there's any doubt about that. So I enjoyed it at least. So yeah, go for it if you can. All right. When we come back, we haven't spent a lot of time talking about that game that John just brought up. The other side, Texas and Ohio State. Where is Texas heading into this game? Feels like winning a college football playoff game should boost your confidence and boost your profile and have people excited about what you're doing. Didn't really go that way for Texas last week. How has that affected them mentally and emotionally heading into this one against Ohio State? We'll find out from Anwar Richardson next, right here on McElroy and Kubelik in the morning. All right, 8:20, Thursday, January 9th, Jocks 94.5. Appreciate you guys tuning in. Still got to talk a lot more the college football playoff semifinals. We haven't spent a ton of time on Texas and Ohio State. Anwar Richardson joins us now. He covers the Texas Longhorns. He's joined us before, knows this team well. Before we move into the game and the teams, Anwar, what's the latest on the weather that you can give us over there in Austin, and then what you're hearing about Dallas as far as anything being impacted by the weather for this game?
Hey, yeah, good morning. I think I checked the forecast this morning. It's supposed to start snowing in Dallas in the early, probably within the next hour or so. And so, the one thing about the Dallas area, DFW area, if you're unfamiliar, there's many cities that are able to handle snow and handle icy weather. And they, you know this in Ohio, and of course Birmingham, places like that, right? Well, Dallas is not one of those areas. They are one of those areas that if it gets the kind of oh my God, it shuts down, right? So there is that portion of it. And so it wouldn't have necessarily an effect on the game. I think it's going to have more of an effect on people traveling to the game as far as airports, delays, like those are the kind of things that'll happen. And so, I think we'll see what happens overnight. If I was a person that was traveling to the game and I was a person that was coming in maybe later on Thursday, try to catch an earlier flight, that's kind of where it is as far as Austin is concerned. Nothing as far as Austin is now. Maybe it's going to start raining today, so there's probably some chance of some ice on the roads. But that'll probably be the extent of it, knowing that most people probably will either leave in the early afternoon-ish, 12-ish or so, and then travel from all the different parts of the state. So it shouldn't have a huge impact. Obviously, the game's indoors. Just people traveling to it, that's the bigger impact.
Anwar Richardson with us. Find his work at orangebloods.com. Covers the Texas Longhorns. You win a college football playoff game, any college football playoff game against any opponent, your fans should be happy. People should feel good about that. You're moving on. You get another life to go do it again the next weekend. I don't feel like that's the case for Texas for some reason. People kind of looking at what the score was and not being able to hold on to it. The rush defense that was dominant, not being able to stay that way. Maybe some mistakes that were made, field goals that were missed. Where do you think this team's confidence level is right now coming off that game against Arizona State?
Well, the thing about Steve Sarkisian is that he'll never, ever apologize for an ugly win. Because at the end of the day, he's always just going to look at the scoreboard, right? And so, at the end of the day, they move on. And look, there's a lot of teams that are quote unquote prettier than Texas who aren't here. Oregon was a pretty team throughout the entire season. And where are they at this moment, right? Ole Miss was a team that everyone thought was kind of going to be that sexy pick. Like, where are they at this point of the season? You can go down the list. And so, yeah, that game against Arizona State gave Texas some fits. Like Arizona State, we saw, Scatterbo and what he was able to do for the running back position. The team kind of wore down a little bit in the second half. To your point, there was those missed field goals. And at the end of the day, they look at it and say, you know what? We didn't play our best ball, and we still won. I think that's the thing about Texas that's kind of been different than a lot of teams in the country this year. Texas has 2 losses, and they're against the same team, Georgia, right? But Georgia this is one of those like styles make fights kind of things, because Georgia looks like gangbusters against Texas, and then they play anybody else, and you're just like, what the hell just happened here? You saw that what happened against them against Notre Dame. Hell, there's the same Georgia team that barely beat Kentucky 13-12 this season. So Texas just looks at it and says, look, we're fortunate, we're happy, we're here. And they're 2 wins away from, bringing the national title back to Austin. So I feel like the confidence from everyone I've spoken to behind the scenes this week is really good. They feel like they match up well. They know it's going to be a tough competition, a tough battle, but they entered this season, Texas did, and the biggest question that everyone had was, how's Texas going to be able to handle the SEC? And at the end of the day, Texas is the only SEC team remaining, and the only team that has a chance to bring a title back to the SEC. So at the end of the day, I think they feel pretty good about where they're at.
Anwar Richardson joining us on the Buyers Right Hotline, covers the Texas Longhorns. I feel like going back to the SEC championship game, maybe a game or two before that, it was, will we see Arch have a package, try to add a little bit of run dynamic to the offense, and got a smidge of it in the SEC championship game. They give the fourth down play, snap it through his legs, and they're able to convert. But we haven't really seen him have a true role here down the stretch. Is there a chance that changes?
I mean, it's a chance that it does change. If I was, a betting man, right? I mean, we've seen a lot of Arch in basically run situations. So this might be one of those like play action kind of games that you throw him in there, as a threat. Sark has done a good job of managing that and just saying like Quinn Ewers is my guy. He's the guy that's going to be my ride or die at this moment. Quinn Ewers was when Sark gets here, he inherits two quarterbacks, Hudson Card, Casey Thompson. Doesn't love either one of them. And then when Quinn Ewers transfers from Ohio State, for him is like he finally got that quarterback that he wanted, the guy that kind of ends up being a program changer. And when it's all said and done, where Quinn Ewers is standing at this moment, he's the best quarterback that Texas has had since Colt McCoy, especially from a statistical standpoint. He leads Texas to a Big 12 championship last year. So there's a lot of loyalty for Sark as relates to Quinn Ewers. Like they've been through a lot. And so it's a good part that he was that's a bit of benefit for Texas and Sarkisian is that the Manning family understands development. They've never been a family that's going to say we're going to ride the emotional roller coaster. They understand that quarterbacks take time to be developed, and when they committed to Texas and Sark, all the things that they committed to always remain the same, right? Sarkisian's still here. A.J. Milwee, the quarterback coach, is still here. University of Texas is still here. Like, everything's intact. So it's just they've been able to say, hey, you wait your turn. 2025 will be your season. There's an understanding from all parties involved that no matter what Quinn Ewers decides to do in 2020-25, and I believe he's going to go pro, but no matter what he decides to do, it's one of those you ain't got to go home, but you got to get out of here. He will have to get out of here because it's Arch Manning's show. So you might see a couple of little packages, you might see a couple of little wrinkles, but ultimately it's going to be Quinn's show, and they'll go out on Quinn's arm, and that's just how it's going to be.
Anwar, this Texas defense has a lot of strengths. I think the concern now lies with what Arizona State was able to do a little bit later in the game. Now, Ohio State's run game doesn't really live between the tackles. They have gotten in pistol and gone downhill a few times this year, but it's not really where they've made their hay the majority of the time. Scadaboo and company were able to do that a little bit later in the game. But Jeremiah Smith's the one that everybody talks about and the one that everybody says there is no answer for. What potentially do you think is the Texas answer, or at least attempted answer, for the freshman wide receiver?
I mean, they have a Thorpe Award winner on that side, which says that they got the best defensive back in the country with Jahdae Barron, right? So I think that becomes the answer, one of the best receivers in the country versus someone who's viewed as the best defensive back in the country. Now, clearly understand, I'm not saying one cancels out the other, right? Smith is legit. He's that dude. So I would say the Texas defense, they haven't seen a receiver who's as good as Jeremiah Smith. I would also say from the Ohio State standpoint, they have not seen a defensive back or defensive backs as good as what Texas presents. And so, I think it ends up being a really interesting battle, a really good battle. Can you slow him down? Can you slow down this offense? Yes. So the thing that Arizona State that was able to do very effectively is that they had a quarterback who was really able to get out of the pocket with Sam Levitt. He was really elusive. And there was a lot of times that he should have been sacked, but he's pretty damn good. And so he was able to extend some plays. Now, he didn't complete a ton of passes. If you go look at his, his passer rating, you look at his completion percentage, it wasn't that great, but he was able to extend them. Will Howard's not going to be that guy who's going to extend those plays. And so they've got a defensive line that's going to be able to come and apply some pressure, to Ohio State. So you got to watch that. They're able to get pressure without blitzing. But when they do blitz, they are creative within their blitz packages. They've got guys coming off the edge, Barron Sorrell, a young freshman by the name of Colin Simmons. They've got a hellified linebacker by the name of Anthony Hill, who's a freshman. Like, they've got some talent that's there, and the main thing is, if they can get the pressure up front and basically force Will Howard into quick passes and then put them into that second and obvious, third and obvious. If they're able to do that with the pressure that they're able to get up front, then you have a chance to slow down. But, if Will Howard is able to count to 5 Mississippi, well, most DBs are going to be in trouble, but, this defense will be in trouble. But this is a defense that creates turnovers. This is a defense that, from an interception standpoint, usually I think they led the country going into last game. So they're ball hawks. They know how to get to the ball. Jeremiah Smith, legit, absolutely legit. Again, when I've talked to people behind the scenes, they know they're going to have to pack a lunch, but they do feel like they've got some DBs that are going to be able to hang. They don't feel like they're going to be embarrassed at all.
Anwar, what do you think this game comes down to? Let's say it's not necessarily just Jeremiah Smith getting him covered, trying to negate his yards. Where does Texas either win or lose this game?
I think it's defense for both of these teams. It's funny because we all know offense sells, right? But the defense wins ball games. And when you look at the teams who are in the Final Four, like the common thread between all those teams is that they have really good defenses. Notre Dame, we saw what they were able to do against Georgia, like good defense. Texas throughout the season has a good defense, so Ohio State has a good defense. I think that's what's going to come down from a defensive standpoint. I think if Ohio State, from a defensive standpoint, if they are able to limit this Texas run game, this is where I believe is the key. If they're able to limit this run game and make Texas into a one-dimensional offense, that's the key. That's the secret sauce for Ohio State, because when Texas wasn't able to run the ball against Arizona State, they weren't able to run the ball against Georgia, but they were able to run the ball against Clemson, and you were able to see how that offense was able to flow. If you can slow down the run against Texas, and then it's just obvious passing situations, I don't think that's where they're at their best. But if this offensive line can open up holes and then create a more balanced offense for Quinn Ewers, then I think that's where it becomes a little bit tricky and a little bit dicey for them. I think it's a defensive game. I'm not expecting a high-scoring game by any stretch of the imagination. I'd be shocked if it was a high-scoring game. But I think that's where it's at for both of these teams. I know we're going to talk about, it's a Will Howard, talk about Jeremiah Smith, we're going to talk about Quinn Ewers and Isaiah Bond and Gunnar Helm. Like, there's a lot of names, but really it's going to come down to that defense. And I think whichever team bends but doesn't break, that's the team that ends up winning.
Absolutely. Anwar, great stuff, man. Thanks for hopping on with us today. Be safe out there today, tomorrow, trying to get in and out of that game, and enjoy it.
All right, brother. You take care.
Anwar Richardson joining us on the Buyers Right Hotline, talking a little bit of Texas and Ohio State. That one going to be fun. That one going to be interesting. But this game tonight may be a little bit more interesting just because of the style of play and just how this thing's going to go, what it's going to look like. We'll spend more time on it. Obviously, more to cover as it approaches. Still coming up on the show today, we've got the coach, Wimp Sanderson. Ben Hartsock going to give us some Ohio State feel on that game tomorrow at 9:30 this morning. But we'll break this one down and switch gears a little bit on the other side. Talk some Alabama basketball. Nice win for the Crimson Tide last night, as well as a portal update when we come back on Jocks 94.5. 8:38, Thursday, January 9th, Jocks 94.5. Talk a little bit of Alabama hoops. SEC basketball in action again last night. Before we get to that, not necessarily transfer portal update, but Pete Thamel reporting that Eli Stowers tells ESPN he's going to return to Vanderbilt for the 25 season. Projected somewhere in the middle rounds of the NFL draft, so he'll be back, which he's still developing. He's a former four-star quarterback recruit, signed with the A&M, went to New Mexico State, then Vanderbilt. But he'll be back in that offense with Diego Pavia. He'll be featured and have a chance to put up some good numbers. That's a big get for Vandy Clark Lee, because that young man is he is exactly what you want from a flex hybrid tight end. He is not necessarily coverable from a physical standpoint, speed, athleticism, height, length. He can beat you in a lot of ways. So that's a big get for the Vanderbilt Commodores. Bama takes out South Carolina on the road last night, 88-68 convincing win, 45-28 at the half. Bama led, 8 of 19 from behind the three-point line. Mark Sears goes for 22 points, 4 of 6 from behind the three-point line. His 9th 20-point game of the season. That is second most among SEC players this year. Janai Broome has 10. But a really nice win for Alabama last night. They shoot 55% from the floor. They hold South Carolina to 3 of 14 from behind the three-point line. So Nate Oates' group continues to look good. The SEC continues to look good. But it was a nice win with Sears kind of orchestrating a lot of what Alabama did last night, being able to knock off South Carolina. It's a tough place to go play. We've talked about playing on the road in this league and how difficult it's going to be. Alabama has started 13 and 2 or better for the 7th time in the last 40 seasons. 2 of those have come under Nate Oates. 10 straight win against South Carolina. That's the longest winning streak by either team in the series. 21 assists for the Tide last night, tied for their second most in the game this year. They had 23 on November the 20th against Illinois. South Carolina, by the way, 10 straight loss at home against AP top 5 teams. The last one came in 2010 against number 1 Kentucky. So Alabama, nice win. They continue to roll in basketball as kind of another big night, really, in the conference. We talked about some of those games 2 nights ago with Florida, Tennessee, with Auburn in action. Texas A&M, they knock out Oklahoma in a battle of top 20 teams, 80-78 on the road. And Ole Miss takes down Arkansas on the road, 73-66. So much for the road games being so difficult because all 3 rode to 66. So much for the road games being so difficult because all 3 road teams won in the SEC last night. That'll bring us back to the college football playoff and what's happening tonight. What coach is this more important for specifically tonight, and why? We'll discuss the 2 head coaches in this game, what it means for them to potentially get this win. You can still be a part of the show, 800-239-9569. Tweet into the show if you want, at Mac and Cube. Always an easy way to be a part of the show there. You can watch live on YouTube. Search WJOX, and you can be a part of the show there. Watch Craig and I usually in studio each and every day, or when we're on the road. You can check us out there. And when you retire and the paychecks stop, how are you going to pay your bills? You have a plan that's going to help you accomplish that regardless of market changes or an unstable economy. If not, and you'd like to get one, get in touch with Tad and Tony Hill at Freedom Financial. Go now to askfreedomfinancial.com to find out how you can protect your retirement. That's askfreedomfinancial.com, askfreedomfinancial.com. This is a paid placement for investment advisory services made available through AE Wealth Management, a registered investment advisor. 8:45 Thursday, January 9th, Jocks 94.5. Who needs this game more tonight? Is it James Franklin? Is it Marcus Freeman? Who needs to get this one? And for their legacy, maybe what it might be, what might happen. You think about this, is this James Franklin's maybe best shot ever at a national championship? Not only because of what he has, a veteran quarterback that has grown, gotten better in Drew Aller, 2,000-yard rushers. I mean, there are not many teams anywhere, anytime that are going to have a tandem of backs like Nick Singleton and Katron Allen. Just not going to happen. Singleton, that 58-yard touchdown run in the Fiesta Bowl against Boise. Katron Allen has 38 career touchdowns. He's tied with Curtis Enos for third most in school history. Saquon has 53, by the way. So you think about defensively, too, some of the veterans they have there. Is he going to be able to get close to this again? And also the field in this year's college football playoffs. This is his best chance to ever win a national title. Marcus Freeman, I don't know if you would feel that way about it, because the team feels like it's built in a little bit of a different way. But it is Notre Dame, and there are expectations, and those expectations are a little bit different. So is it more important that James Franklin kind of get over the hump? Is it more important that Marcus Freeman maybe asserts himself as Notre Dame being one of the powers again, heading to a national championship game and finding a way to get this win and be able to get there? I don't know how it couldn't be James Franklin for me, because I think when his name comes up, when people talk about James Franklin, immediately it goes to the letdowns. It's not the accomplishments. It's not what he's done. It's not what he's been, where he's been, how he's done it, specifically the success at Penn State, but then also the success that he had at Vanderbilt, which has still not been duplicated. It's just not being able to knock off those top 25, top 10, top 5 teams. The bigger matchups that he's had and the advantages that people view he had being stuck in an easier division, and not being able to get over those teams that a lot of people looked at as the standard in the Big Ten, I feel like it becomes more important for him. And then, as we stated earlier in the show, just what does that then look like if James Franklin advances to the national championship game and it's Ohio State again? And just the demons that are going to present themselves with that matchup and what it's going to look like. I mean, do you feel strongly one way or the other, John? This is more important Marcus Freeman. This is more important James Franklin, just to be able to get this win?
It is decidedly on Franklin's side where the pressure is, because I think the stat is he's going into the postseason. He was 3-17 against top 10 teams. Very quietly, he just got 2 wins, because Boise was 9 and SMU was 10, according to ranking. So he just got 2 more. So he more or less doubled. It's going to be same old Franklin, same old everything. Now, much success as he's had this postseason, in essence, right now, especially if he were to lose, he's gotten him as far as Brian Kelly did. He got him to the semifinal, which, granted, would have won, those first couple of round games, but he hasn't. There is ample pressure on Marcus Freeman, but I think there is decidedly more on James. And with that one, because if he quite possibly could be his best shot at winning a national championship, and even still his kryptonite, the one team he just can't beat, and that could potentially be on that other sideline.
And two, like I said, I don't know if those 2 games are going to even count for the people that we're talking about, John. When you mentioned SMU, Boise State, nice wins, playoff wins, but perceptionally, is that going to get it done? I would say the answer to that
no. But
it's not. Penn State's got 34 wins over the last 3 seasons. That's the most wins in any 3-year span in program history ever. Over that same span, as we talked about, Notre Dame has 13 wins against ranked opponents. Only Georgia has more. So Notre Dame has been doing the things that Penn State fans and people that watch from a distance feel like James Franklin cannot do, and it's knocked off those higher ranked teams. Can he get it done tonight? I think the opportunity is there. And when you look at this path and just the matchups for Penn State, it has been forgiving, I'll say. I'm not going to say easy because it's still a playoff game. You still had to go against great players, still had to go against great coaches, still had to go against great people, great schemes, and maybe not match up with you as well in certain spots. I mean, let's be honest. You had a quarterback that essentially gave you a game in the first quarter in round one. And you had what a lot of people viewed as a bit of a one-trick pony in round two. So you'll be tested in more areas tonight. There's no doubt about that. And I absolutely think that when you're talking about just what this team offers up in Notre Dame, it is going to be a challenge on special teams. It is going to be a challenge defensively and on offense. Now, some of those challenges in different places might not be what they were against other teams, but it's going to be tough. It feels like because of that Franklin history, there is very little pressure on Marcus Freeman now, when I feel like going into the season there was. Is it gone? Has he just done enough for this year? Is it the things that he's overcome, maybe from an injury perspective, maybe from the perspective of being able to sort of piece all this together after the loss to Northern Illinois, which is one that I know a lot of people are still going to be frustrated with. But it feels like this is a guy that had a ton of pressure on him before the season. That pressure mounted after the Northern Illinois loss, and then he has been able to sort of brush a lot of that to the side. Now, you win a playoff game at home against Indiana. I mean, that's an in-state team that it was an impressive win. And then you go knock off Georgia, a team that a lot of people, including myself, had picked at the beginning of the season to win the national championship. That's an SEC team. That's an SEC power. There's a lot of good grace that comes with those two wins, as there should be. But it is interesting. And does that allow Marcus Freeman to maybe coach a little bit differently? Because he's not thinking about what's happened to top 10, top 5 teams in his past. Not thinking about exactly what was going to go down in those games because of where that team was ranked. And then maybe just in the back of his mind, could he? I mean, think about how risky James Franklin has been in this postseason. Going forward on fourth down. Looking for different ways to convert. Telling his offensive coordinator, Andy Kolnicki, hey, you got 2 downs here to go get it. Inside his own territory, early in playoff games. Now, you can look at that 2 ways. 1, he's been aggressive. 2, it's been risky, and he's played high-risk football. So if that's the case, then there you go. But I think James Franklin, it's at least going to be there. You can't say that it's not a part of his brain and it's just completely left his being, because this has been the mantra around him for a long time. And now he's got to find a way to get rid of it and find a way to get it off. But I don't know if this is the one to be able to do it against, because they're going to give you a similar style game. They're not going to make a ton of mistakes. They will take the football away, and they're usually going to win on special teams. So it's going to be a massive challenge for his team to be able to go out and potentially get that monkey off his back tonight. And as you stated, John, with a couple of the other ones, maybe it's partially off, but it's just the perception of it is not far enough off.
I think that Georgia win really kind of took a lot of the pressure that would have been on there, because if he'd lost that game, I think people would be thinking about Marcus Freeman, kind of how they're feeling about James Franklin, that, okay, he got Indiana that probably didn't deserve to be there, but he got it at home. Okay, yeah, he was able to win that game. But they lost to Northern Illinois. They beat an SEC team, but beat big bad Georgia. Mm-hmm. And so now people are like, oh, okay, like maybe this is for real. And did it in a way that made them look not necessarily like Ohio State, but we didn't know you had this gear. We didn't know you had this dimension about you.
Right.
And so, okay, if they were to lose this game, then most likely they're losing to the better team as opposed to shooting themselves in the foot. And so I think you're right. I think he's playing with house money tonight, and so that may afford him some opportunities to be like, heck, why not? We pulled off a mass substitution on a fourth down play. Why not throw a fake in here? Why not do this? Why not do that? We do not care. Let's go.
And I think for Marcus Freeman, he's also so early in his head coaching career that, I mean, you can look at it from one perspective of, okay, he found a way to get Notre Dame in there. There's no guarantee that the longevity is still going to be there, because we've seen, like with Brian Kelly, like he never really got over the hump as far as the playoffs concerned. Yeah, he did play for a national title, but he got boat raced in the national title game. So he's so early on in his Notre Dame career that I don't think that he has as much pressure as Brian Kelly was because he had been there for so long. And then for James Franklin, he's just I don't think this game is going to be enough. It almost is going to take a national title for him to kind of start to wean some of that stuff down as far as his expectation and just his perception of his career.
Unfortunately, some people still look back on it, and that'll be a big part of the conversation. You think about mistakes. Boise made them last week against Penn State. Will Notre Dame make similar mistakes if Penn State's going to find a way to win? Do they have to? 4 turnovers. That was the most in a game this season for Boise last week. Maddox Madsen, 3 interceptions. That was the same total that he had the entire season entering that game. They had 13 penalties in that game. That was their most in a game since 2004. They also missed 2 field goals. Notre Dame's not going to make those kind of mistakes tonight. They're not going to give them those breaks tonight like Boise did a week ago. And we talked about SMU, the early turnovers, the multiple pick sixes. I don't think Notre Dame's giving you those either. Another reason I think this game's going to be close. I think it's going to be competitive and going to come down probably to some of those mistakes as to who makes them and who capitalizes on those mistakes in the college football playoff semifinal tonight, Notre Dame, Penn State. We'll ask the coach, Wimp Sanderson, his thoughts on it right after this on Jocks 94.5. Thursday, January 9th, McElroy and Kublik in the morning. Greg off at meetings for tonight's Orange Bowl, college football playoff semifinal. He'll be on the call for that one. I've got some pre- and post-game radio duties. will not be doing anything during the actual game. But excited to be a part of it. As I told Stanford Steve earlier, I've never been to that stadium. So excited to get in there, kind of check it out and see it. And I think we're going to get a hell of a football game tonight. He joins us each and every week, thanks to our friends at Coke and Piggly Wiggly. It's the coach, Wimp Sanderson. Coach, great to have you on. How we doing this morning?
I'm doing okay, and I hope you are. I know that Greg's not on today. He needs to be on because he needs some of this basketball stuff more than you do. I listen to what he says. I need to help him a little bit. I will mention the football at the end of the show because I figure you've talked enough football to last. So I thought I'd come on here and just mention the basketball so that you people that are interested in that will listen, and then I'll talk about the football at the end because Notre Dame has a high school quarterback that played basketball. In basketball, the 5 best teams are going to be Kentucky, Tennessee, Alabama, Auburn, and Florida. These teams will be South Carolina, Missouri will be pretty weak. Those 2 teams will be weak. Vanderbilt, they're going to be a little bit better. Ole Miss and Mississippi State are going to be a little bit better. Now, let me explain something to you, Ho. Here's what happens. You have 3 teams to play twice. Now, listen to me now. 3 teams to play twice. When you're trying to study the schedule, you got to see who those 3 teams are. For Alabama, they're Auburn, Mississippi State, and Kentucky. Don't be shocked if Alabama, of those 6 games, they're playing them twice, of those 6 games that they may lose 2. They could easily lose 2. I'm not getting on here and saying they're not going to be 6-0. They could be 6-0. They could be 5-1. But they're probably going to lose 2 because they got to go to Kentucky. They got to go to Auburn. They might not. But that takes a factor as to who you think is going to win the league. For Auburn, they're going to have South Carolina, Georgia, and Alabama. They're less likely to lose 2 because those games are a little bit easier than Alabama's. When you think about the league, neither Alabama or Auburn go to Florida. Going to Florida is very, very hard. Alabama goes to Tennessee. Auburn does not go to Tennessee. So that's quite different. So when you're playing 3 teams twice, it makes it a little bit different. So I wanted the fans to kind of understand that. It used to be that you played 5 teams twice, and that was 10 of the 18 games. Now you play 6 teams twice, and that's 6 of the 18 games. An injury will cause problems. The fans will be disgusted with their teams this year because every group of fans, because the basketball is so good, thinks that their particular team is going to win the league.
Well,
Okay.
but I do think, Coach, we've already started having some of the discussions about how special this season looks for the SEC. Some things that are being done and accomplished have not been done before in this league. So maybe that offsets a little bit of the expectations of the fans to think that they're just going to win every game and every game is going to be won by 20. At least I hope so. But it's a deep league, and then playing on the road obviously going to be tough in some of these spots where it's difficult to go get a win.
Yeah.
I want to go back to a team or 2 teams in the game that you kind of mentioned slightly there. Tennessee, Florida the other night. Was that a little bit of an anomaly? Is Florida's defense that good? Is Tennessee just not as strong offensively? What did you really take away from that one?
Here's what I took away from it. Florida scored 30 more points inside. If you're a fan, look at it, you say, "Boy, I bet they shot the threes." They scored 30 more inside, which means they played harder. They did a better job on the offensive and defensive glass, especially the offensive glass. They got a lot of cheap baskets. When you talk about cheap baskets, you talk about layups. That's cheap baskets, fast break baskets. And the reason for that game, the way it went, is they played very, very well on the outside. There was only a couple of threes different, but they got 30 more points inside, and that's the reason that Tennessee got beat. Tennessee didn't make it on the outside. If you're going to play coach basketball, we've got some coaches that listen. The most important thing, one of the most important things besides doing a lot of shooting of the 3, is to know how to defend the 3. You must be able to get in the guy's face, and you cannot be late getting to that guy that shoots the 3. If you are, you're going to get killed. So you've got to be darn sure that you understand defending the three. As I've already said, you've mentioned it before to me. I mean, we play 4 on 5 so that you'll get there quicker and understand to get there. So Alabama and Auburn are both very, very good. The league is better. The league is that you're not going to agree to this. You'll hang up saying, "Oh, coach." The league was just this good. Not as many teams going when we played 18 games back when we had 10 teams in the league. You're going to find that between the 5 teams that I told you that were the best and the 2 or 3 teams that I told you that were the worst, I should have mentioned one other team. In the middle there'll be some decent teams. The surprise team will be Vanderbilt. They'll come in there and they'll play a little bit better. The disappointing team will be Arkansas. There's a chance Arkansas will go zip 3. You saw last night that for the first time in years, all three home teams lost last night, and that was quite different.
It was, because we know that these are a lot of difficult arenas to go play in, a lot of difficult teams to play against on the road, and you've told us how tough it is to play on the road, how different it is to play on the road. Well, go ahead.
The difference too. Let me just butt in there, is the officiating. What is the real key for a good official? You know what it is? It's guts. It's guts. To have the guts to call the foul. Yeah, one of the most amazing things while I'm on this, well, it really was tricky. I have told people that Kentucky is not quite as good as I thought they would be, but Kentucky goes to Georgia. Cole, get this one, and Georgia Georgia shoots 38 cotton picking free throws. I mean, most of the time it's flip flopped every time. The Kentucky, when you went to Kentucky, you were playing 8 of them. But they played at Georgia, and even when Kentucky is the visiting team, they usually shot a lot more free throws than you did, and Georgia shot 38. Excuse me.
So you think it's just an internal fear of being booed and heckled by the fans, essentially?
Well, I think you have to be in position to make the call. You can't guess. You've got to be in shape, and you've got to be in position to make the call. And then at the same time, you've got to have the guts to call it. You've got to have the guts to call it. Sometimes when the fan and there are a lot of good officials. I stayed on officials, and a lot of the officials, believe it or not, really liked me, and I liked them. But I had one of them's wife called me when he died of cancer and tell me how much he enjoyed working for my team, and I really appreciated that. So we've got 16 teams in the league now. We've got the 5 at the top. We've got the 3 at the 3 or 4 at the bottom. My opinion, and most people will not agree to that, the most teams that will be in the NCAA tournament will only be 10. Now, I could be dead wrong. There will be a team that gets somebody hurt, and that injury will cost them a great deal. There will be a team that will play better than we thought they were going to play. That could be Georgia. I don't think so. I think Georgia will be towards the bottom. There could be a team that's going to be worse than we thought they were going to play. Right now, that's Arkansas. So for people that, and I know when you start talking basketball, some of them turn the radio off. But I think it's interesting to see that, as you have already mentioned, a league that is really good in basketball. We have well coached. Alabama and Auburn do great jobs. Bucky does a great job at Samford. They are really good. He's really a good basketball coach, and it's going to be interesting to see what happens.
So I want to go back to this, the differential on the road, because we see this oftentimes, and I think we saw it with, God, I can't remember. I don't know if it was last year or 2 years ago, and it was at Arkansas, I think, and it was either Alabama or Auburn, and one team had like 42 free throws at home, and then they came back and played the other place. They had like 7 free throws. It was insane, sort of the back and forth. Is there ever a game that the free throw differential realistically should be that different, or do you believe that it's 95% based on some sort of home crowd advantage?
Well, I think there's.
Unless it's like, obviously, if it's like Hack-a-Shack, coach, and it's like you're playing that style game, we get that.
Yeah, sometimes you go in there and you're more aggressive. You play more people. Alabama last night played 11 people, and you're just more aggressive. You feel like that's the best way to play. There are times that your officials that call it a little bit closer. the officials do a good job. If you commit the foul, the most important thing is just exactly what I said. Be darn sure that you're in position to make the call, and be able to, not be too heavy, and get up and down the floor and do a good job of that and calling it the way you see it. And you can't blame the wins or losses on officials. And I don't do that. You have to listen to me. You have to win the games you're supposed to win, and win a few of them that's going to be a toss up. But you must, if you go in and you play, for example, Alabama plays South Carolina, and Auburn plays South Carolina Saturday. Everybody's going to say, "Well, that'll be an easy game." Those are the games that you fear when you're a coach. You fear somebody that everybody thinks the game is going to be easy. You got to play, and you got to be ready to play, because mental is to physical what three is to one. And if you're mentally ready to play, when we played Auburn, that's the only time that I separated that game from the rest of them. Sonny's a good friend of mine. I got a lot of friends at Auburn. You're an Auburn guy, and I went down for Sonny's dedication thing. But when we got ready to play Auburn, I was not a very good camper that week. And I did separate that game from the rest of them. The rest of them, I tried to get them to understand that whoever we played, bottom of the league, middle of the league, or top of the league, they're capable of beating you. And so you've got to be ready to play. But the 3 games that you play, if you're a fan of not Alabama or Auburn, and you're listening to this show today, then you go to your team that you like, and you look at the 3 teams that they're going to play twice. And this will give you a little bit of an indication as to sort of whether your team is going to be really quite as good as you think they're going to be. So that's it.
Do you have a thought on?
Go
go ahead. Go ahead. No, you take it, Coach. You got it.
No, I don't. I want to jump from this. I mean, you'll say, why would you do this on the radio? We're burying our 39th president of the United States of America. And I want people to think about that. He did a good job, regardless of what you think, the Democrats or Republicans. I think that we need to appreciate what everybody has done who's tried to lead America. And the other factor that I want to mention, not part of it, is please think about these people in this fire. When they had not, and I know this is not part of radio, my show, our show. But that wind blew so hard, and to stand in your front yard and to see your house burning down, and you can't do anything about it, and struggling trying to get out of there with what little stuff you have that's memorabilia. It's a sad day there, and I just, for whatever reason, wanted to mention those 2 things.
No, it's devastating, Coach. It's just it looks like a war zone. It doesn't look real, honestly. It looks like a movie. A lot of the shots, and you see this 91-year-old man yesterday in Pasadena standing outside of his home, and it's gone. And he and his wife talking about everything that they had was there, all of it, and they'll never have it again.
Winning or losing today, winning or losing tomorrow. Who's going to do this? What are my kids going to do? What's this going to happen? How's my wife doing? Mine's struggling. All those kinds of things, and you look at those people who lose, and I understand, because people are going to say, "Oh yeah, look at all the money they have, and look at everything that they, so what? I don't care. Money's money's no big deal. So the love of money is a big deal, I guess. Anyway, I guess I'm brought to you.
Bone Thugs and Harmony tried to tell us that, Coach, for the love of money. But nonetheless, I want to get your thoughts on this playoff game tonight. One of these 2 playoff games, is that going to be a blue plate for you? Are you confident in one or the other?
Yeah, I've had a hard time with it. I would say that I'm going to have to stick with Notre Dame. I do think this, though, which was kind of confusing. If the pass is not dropped by Georgia in a wide open touchdown situation, I listen to you guys every day, and you know a lot better about this stuff than me. And it happened. He dropped the pass that was going to be a touchdown, and the fumble that occurred inside the 20 to start the game were 2 very costly plays in this game. I'm going to go ahead and pick Notre Dame in this game tonight against Penn State. There's a 1.5. I think that they'll win it because I think they're mentally pretty tough. I think their quarterback, who's got a lot to him, and the quarterback at Penn State does too. He's a good athlete. He's smart. He's not going to make many mistakes, and I feel that way. Don't be surprised if Texas is not a little bit better in this game than you might think. Right? As you look at it today, the first thing you say is, Ohio State's so much better. It's going to be a 2 or 3 touchdown. I've tried to study Sark because I think he's so good in getting people open with this stuff, and that I know nothing about that kind of stuff. Only thing I know is that if you're an offensive coordinator, you get blamed for everything.
I want to ask you this quickly, Coach, because we talked about James Franklin and his history in struggling against highly ranked teams. And I mean, listen, we feel guilty of it. We talked about it here. Who's this game bigger for? Is it big for him? Does it matter? And then I start talking about it, and I usually end up thinking to myself, does that even affect how does that affect a head coach? Like, a head coach is not calling all the plays. A head coach is not dialing up blitzes. We have some guys out there that are calling their own stuff. I mean, Lincoln Riley calls his own plays. Yeah, it happens some places. But even if a coach does feel that kind of pressure, does it matter? Does it affect the game that much? I don't know if you ever had something in your career that you were trying to overcome, or that you felt the pressure from, and how does that trickle down to a team, or does it really?
I don't think that much. There are some coaches in your little mind, in my little mind, that I wanted to beat. When I played Dean Smith, and I wanted to beat Dean Smith because everybody thought Dean Smith was a genius, and he was. You think about that. But outside of that, I don't think it really does. You prepare your team well. Those guys are in the press box who are calling the offenses and the defenses. You look at all I get on my show is the criticism of the offensive coordinator at Alabama. That's all I've gotten the whole 12 years I've been had a show. They never do anything right. They're on Bobo. They were on Bobo in the Georgia game. Bobo at Georgia has done a terrific job. There's not a better offensive coordinator in the world, and I don't even know him, than Mike Bobo. But and let me tell you, and I had this said on my show today. The coach does not pick out the quarterback. The player does. The players pick out the quarterback. The players know who the quarterback is. The players know who walks by their locker room, onto their locker room, and they all care a lot about him. The players pick out the quarterback. So did Milroe play as good as he needed to play? No, probably not. But and the other factor too is and I'm just jumping everywhere now. When you think about going to, if you're Alabama going to Oklahoma, let's give Oklahoma's defense some credit. Let's understand that Oklahoma's defense is darn good. Oh yeah, but Alabama didn't do this, they didn't do that. That guy that ran the football and fumbled it, it wasn't the guy in the press box that fumbled it, it was that guy. So to me, we have to be careful with the things that we say about, because OCs, they ain't got a cotton picking chance. None of them do.
All right, Coach, we appreciate the time. Always great catching up with you. Thank you so much.
All right, Coca-Cola and Piggly Wiggly. And I want to thank Piggly Wiggly for having me on. Coke for it's a great drink, and Piggly Wiggly, great people. Appreciate it. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Coach. We'll catch up next week. There he is, the Coach Wimp Sanderson, joining us on the Buyers Right Hotline. Great conversation. Went a lot of different directions, but it's always fun catching up with Coach. And needed to talk a little bit of basketball. Felt like he didn't think that we do that, but we had just done it the previous segment. So we will shift over to that Texas-Ohio State game, what it's going to look like. Ben Hartsock played his college football at Ohio State, played in the NFL, now does college football talk for SiriusXM. He'll be with us on the other side to discuss the opportunities that Texas may have to find a way to win against his Ohio State Buckeyes right after this on McElroy and Kubelik in the morning. All right, 9:23 a.m. Thursday, January 9th. Great visit from the coach, Wimp Sanderson. Can always find the podcast at jocksfm.com. In the App Store, just search WJOX. You can download the app. The podcast live there as well. Both of these teams, Notre Dame, Penn State, are sitting on season high win totals. They have never been here before where they have gotten this season. Both making their sixth appearance in the Orange Bowl. Notre Dame's last trip, 31-26 loss to Florida State in 1996. Penn State's last trip, a 26-23 win against Florida State in 2006. We've talked about Notre Dame win streaks that they're on, things that have been going their way. They lead the FBS with 31 takeaways this season. Those takeaways have led to an FBS leading 155 points off those turnovers. That's the most in a season by any team over the last 10 years. Now, you give Penn State some credit because they don't give it away a whole lot. But the Nittany Lions did force 7 turnovers in their wins against SMU and Boise State. So it goes a little bit further as to taking care of the football, kind of that slow, methodical style football game where the one interception or the one strip sack, kind of similar to Notre Dame's game last week, are going to be massive. And for Penn State, some of those have come a little bit earlier where those big swings and momentum have gone their way. Last week, it was kind of that Singleton 58-yard run that was sort of the nail in the coffin. But what will that big play be tonight? Who makes that big play for one of these two football teams? Because it just feels as though it's going to be 1, 2, 3 plays that are going to decide this game. Not that that'll be the reason that that team won it, but just it's going to swing everything to ultimately the other side not being able to counterpunch. That's how I think this game goes. That's how I look at this game and think of how it's going to be broken down. Neither team gives up a ton of explosive plays. Neither turns it over a lot. Both have taken it away. Who can best protect it? And points going to be at a premium. So therefore, special teams obviously are going to be huge. We'll continue breaking it down. Ben Hartsock played his football at Ohio State. We're going to break down that other semifinal game that's coming up tomorrow. Does Texas have a chance against this Ohio State football team? Hartsock tells us next on McElroy and Kubelik in the morning. We're not going to get to this answer today, I don't think, because we're going to have a couple other things. But listener James did text me. He actually caught my "For the Love of Money" Bone Thugs and Harmony comment with Coach when he was on the show, which E. Robinson tweeted into the show. Oh boy, Echo Cubic, this is going to be stuck in my head all day now. And I'm not upset at all. And the video of "For the Love of Money," Bone Thugs and Harmony, which I played for about 4 seconds and then immediately asked myself the question of why did every 90s rap video shoot from the ground up?
That was
every
the thing. Don't know
single
why.
one. Like you had to get the ground shot up towards the individuals all standing around performing. Why did we get that? Every single one of them. Ice Cube, Snoop, Dre, NWA, like every single one of them, unless it was like a moving scene in a vehicle or whatnot. It was when it was a standstill shot, ground up shot.
Yeah, Biggie was the same too. Yeah.
Was that like the John Singleton? You have to do this in your rap videos back in the day. Like I don't know who was producing all the rap videos and directing them, but like every single one of them, that was what you had to have that shot. And now I need to know why. Like I need a VH1 behind the music. Why that was the go-to shot for every single rap video back in the day.
It worked.
We had to have that. Cypress Hill, I remember a couple of theirs.
Yeah.
Shooting up. Beastie Boys, all almost shooting up there, unless it was like Sabotage running around sprinting, doing parkour through the streets or whatever. Like I need to know, like why were we doing that? Were they not in that one video?
No,
they were just like
sprinting
up Sabotage. They're just running through the city. Like that's all they were doing. It's like they were the cops were chasing them or something. All right, never mind. Ben Hartsock will join us now, not to talk 90s rap videos, but to discuss this Ohio State football team. Go ahead.
Wake up. It's the first of the month. Come on.
Yeah.
Cleveland, Ohio. Listen, come on.
That's your state. That's your state.
That's right. That's right. Bone Thugs and Harmony.
We don't have a problem with them. And actually, I wish I could make the listeners privy to the conversation that John and I had during the break about which rap songs brought a certain demographic to the table, and that one might be towards Crossroads might be the one towards the top of the list. They might be on that Mount Rushmore of that list if we were to make it. But that's an off-season conversation I think we should have.
I love Bone Thugs and Harmony, man. I'm thankful for my football experience as a pasty white dude from a farm in southern Ohio. Darnell Sanders will always have a special place in my heart. He was a veteran tight end when I was a freshman at Ohio State. He introduced me to Trick Daddy, baby, because I'm a thug, and it changed my life. And I like hip hop now. Trick loves the kids. Yeah. So, our football experience was the most diverse time in my life as a human, and I'm incredibly thankful for it.
All right. So I did not know that's one of the best things about football right there, the locker room and just different people it brings together. Yeah. Like I can remember I listened to certain music growing up, and my best friend in my apartment complex, Jonathan Krosky, like one day he gets in the car and I was listening to Stone Temple Pilots, and he's just like, because we would always listen to Outkast, Wu-Tang, and he gets in and I had that going, and he was like, bro, what is this? I was like, I'll switch it up. He goes, no, let that go for a second. And I was like, okay. And then it's like all of a sudden, like he had never heard it. He gets into it, and we were riding to football practice, and the next thing you know, like he's into Stone Temple Pilots. So you just kind of never know. But that's one of the best things about a locker room.
I could never get Darnell to get into Sammy Kershaw or Travis Tritt, man. I tried, but
that's not surprising.
He didn't take it.
Yeah, that is not surprising. All right, we know what this Ohio State offense has been in the playoffs. Is there a reason for you to see versus this Texas defense, Ben, that does not continue tomorrow night?
Well, yeah, I mean, it can stop because it was stopped against Michigan, and Ohio State has been good all season, but it hasn't been this good except the last 2 weeks. What we've seen the last 2 weeks is like, oh yeah, that's a $20 million roster. So Steve Sarkisian has to show the Michigan game to his guys. Say, look, it's like Rocky. Like, look, he is a man. He does bleed. Like, it's not Ivan Drago, right? So Ohio State can be stopped. What they did, they started fast. They punched early and they punched often. And maybe the most impressive facet of Ohio State the past 2 weeks, it was against Oregon last week. It was the third quarter. Oregon touchdown. And then Ohio State goes out and goes 3 and out. Like, that's a recipe for a rally right there. And to Ohio State defensive credit, maybe it's the most underappreciated but important thing Ohio State did last week was that next drive, the rallies on, Ohio State forced Oregon to a 3 and out, not just a 13-yard stomping of like, no, you're not going to give life to your opponent and allow the very, very underappreciated but important moment in that Oregon game was that second drive of the third quarter. They squashed any hope of Oregon bringing a rally.
Absolutely. Ben Hartsock played his college football at Ohio State, does radio for SiriusXM now, breaking down college football. He's with us on the Buyers Right hotline. The defensive line has just been different these last two games. I feel like it was more pick and choose, individually based throughout the course of the year. One guy flashes, two guy flash, kind of off and on, but it's been consistent these last two games pretty much across the board. Does that continue? And if it doesn't, how detrimental would that be for this Ohio State football team?
Well, Ohio State's secondary at points in this season had looked vulnerable. Specifically, the first Oregon game in October, Denzel Burke had a rough night, and ultimately throughout the course of the season, Denzel Burke, the cornerback one, has been, by my view, surpassed by Davis Igbinosun as cornerback one. But after that period, or after that Oregon loss in October, the secondary did tighten up, didn't allow a touchdown all the way until the postseason through the air. So they can be exposed in that way, but it's like what a coach has told me that's always rung true. 85% of pass coverage is pass rush. So that front end being coupled to the back end, and you mentioned those guys have really shelled and are hitting on all cylinders at the defensive line. It makes the back end's job so much easier. Specifically to the D line, though, what has been, we saw the sacks last week, 8 sacks on all the sacks on Dylan Gabriel that they had. Now was 11 up until the postseason, and they allowed 8 in that game. But even more as a double click on that, what I've seen, and this is really specifically to Jack Sawyer, he's batting the ball down. Jack Sawyer he maybe it's because he's built a little bit like J.J. Watt, that long, like the dude's built like a statue, Drago. But J.J. Watt had that innate ability to know it's not just being long enough or tall enough to bat the ball down at the line of scrimmage. It's having that football sense, that IQ of, I'm not going to get home, so I'm going to transition from pass rush to eyes on the quarterback and try to position myself, and then timing to get those paws up to bat that ball down. Those things are not recognized in the stat sheet as well, but that's just as effective as a sack. That's just as effective as a hurry. The Ohio State's D-line is being disruptive. Cody Simon, as well as the linebacker, has been used. Like it's a mesh of Jim Knowles is really found the best blend of when to blitz, when not, when to stunt, when not, when to just let those talented D linemen rush. That's all working well, but it's not just the sacks. It's the batting balls down at the line of scrimmage. It's also using blitz at those key times. That's why this defense is gelling so well.
All right, so go back to the offense, and if Jeremiah Smith is neutralized, what does that do to Ohio State? Are there just too many other weapons for Chip to lean on? And does it matter if Jeremiah Smith has 2 catches or 12 catches in this game?
Well, really, Jeremiah Smith was not targeted in the Michigan game. Like, that's the one everybody's going to look to. That's what the Texas try to replicate that. The problem is Texas isn't going to be able to build off that because Ohio State's not going to game plan the way that it did against Michigan. That was maybe the biggest atrocity of that loss, was the way that the game plan paid out. They didn't target Jeremiah Smith in the second half. If you target him, he's going to get his catches. So there is that cat and mouse of, okay, you're going to bracket him, you're going to put 2 guys on him, dedicate. There is enough talent. Emeka Mbuka is he's not a WR2. He's a WR1A, 1B. He is at that good. And if they, like Brandon Ennis and Carnell Tate, they'd be a 3rd and 4th high school recruiting class as well. So they do have so many options. Is Will Howard. Can you bait him in? You have to. Going back to 90s hip hop references, I guess this is more early 2000s. It's like you've got to neutralize Pop. So can Texas's defense use Will Howard's strength? Will Howard has a ton of confidence right now. He's got a ton of command. His best 2 games have been played these past 2 weeks, and he's never struggled with confidence. He's always believed he can thread the needle. So can you use that against him? Bait him. Of course, being disruptive and forcing him to throw the ball early, but can you build coverages and disguises that you bait Will Howard into that dangerous throw? Because he had a pick 6 against Penn State. He had a virtual pick 6 against Michigan early in the game and a second interception later. And his history at Kansas State, he throws a high completion rate, 70+% completion rate, but he has thrown critical turnovers at critical times throughout his career. He's not done it the past 2 weeks. Can you bait him into going back to that quarterback?
Ben Hartsock joining us on the Buyers Right Hotline. Played at Ohio State, covers college football for SiriusXM now. I just want to know what changed and when and how. We've heard about this players-only meeting or a meeting with just Ryan Day and the seniors. I know what the Michigan game was, and the rest of the season was good, but it didn't look overly dominant like this playoff run did. I also think that I've seen more Chip Kelly in the offense these last 2 games than I did maybe the last 4 games of the season, if that makes any sense. Just more of the misdirection, kind of moving the pieces, splitting the defense, so to speak. The defensive line, like I said, collectively has just been together more, playing better more often. How and why did things change?
Yeah, that's so tough. Like the joke is are you willing to lose to Michigan to unlock this werewolf that has been this team this past 2 weeks? Like, I know that's a joke, but I think there is an element of Chip Kelly's been in the building for less than a year. Will Howard, same way. Quinshon Judkins, even Jeremiah Smith is a true freshman. There is an element of reps together that you get that comfort. And usually this happens. Let me get Riley Leonard with Mike Denbrock. Like, there was a gradual figuring out of how to best cater your offense to that quarterback. I think for Chip Kelly, you mentioned the run game, the misdirection. I look at like the resurgence of Travion Henderson. He's knowing how he likes to run the ball, and he's a slash and cut, and his ability to get through the line of scrimmage is so incredible. We didn't see that earlier in the year. I think that's a function of you just have to have reps together as a play caller with his offense to see that come together at its highest level. And then the other thing is there's an element of the new era of college football where these guys, it's always been big eyeballs. It's always been big pressure, especially in this postseason. But Ohio State has had an extra helping of that because of their losses to Michigan, because of the $20 million roster, and because of the expectations of living up to that. Every one of these guys, like Cole, we didn't get this till we made it to the NFL, of living up to the expectations of your salary. And I think that Ohio State has certainly found a way to disconnect from all of that pressure that is, it's not unique to them, but I do think that Ohio State, for whatever reason, gets an extra helping of that pressure that they certainly seem like it's thrown off that shackles and playing uninhibited these last 2 games.
Ben, we really appreciate the time. Great stuff. I love talking football with you. Actually, I enjoy talking non-football stuff with you, but hope we're able to do it again soon.
Bun. All right, boys. See ya.
There you go. Ben Hartsock joining us on the Buyers Right Hotline, covers college football for SiriusXM, played at Ohio State, giving us his thoughts on Ohio State and Texas tomorrow, even though we get Notre Dame and Penn State tonight. Should have asked him just his quick thoughts on that one, because obviously he has opinions on it and has watched those teams and understands what they're all about, but didn't get to that with Hartsock. So when we come back, we will kind of wrap up our thoughts, give you our predictions on tonight's Penn State Notre Dame game, where we're leaning, and what we like the most. That's next on McElroy and Kubelik in the morning. 10:47 a.m. where I am here in Miami. McElroy already heading off to production meetings, getting set for his game tonight. He'll be on the call for Penn State, Notre Dame. You think about historically these two teams, two teams in the top 10 all-time wins in college football history. Notre Dame tied with Texas 4th, Penn State 7th all-time. Penn State the only team left making their playoff debut in these Final Four teams remaining. Penn State, by the way, tonight will be playing their 16th game of the season. Texas will do that tomorrow. That is an FBS record. So that record will be, well, ties an FBS record. It'll be broken with the national championship game most likely because Yale was the last team to do it in 1894 when they were 16-0. You didn't want to mess with that Yale defense in 1894. That group, you talk about physicality, balance on both sides.
You know,
just the team, total team effort there for Yale in 1894. That was a team that everybody talks about them as one of the all-time greats.
And they played 16 games, where most teams were playing what, 2, 3,
4. Most teams were 3-2, 4-1 back in the day. Absolutely. So that's just historically kind of some of the things happening tonight. We'll get to our picks on it in just a moment. You should pick Game Day Men's Health if you're looking to feel better. If you lack energy, if you're getting poor sleep, feel on edge, could be the effects of low testosterone. Game Day Men's Health can help you. Here's what you're going to do. Go to GameDayMen'sHealth.com right now. Schedule a free consultation. With that, free PSA test, free testosterone test. They're going to give you an idea where your baseline health is and then tell you how they can help you. Also, multiple weight loss programs available at Game Day Men's Health. They've got a nutritionist that they can connect you with, that you can get everything kind of sorted out, come up with a new plan for the new year for you to be able to drop a little bit of weight, get in shape, all with the help of Game Day Men's Health. Now, here's why this is important. Because the Game Day Men's Health thing's a little bit different. It is a low-stress locker room environment. Great people. Not going to try to push you in any things. Holistic approach to health and wellness. But there's a minimal upfront cost for the programs they offer. They're not going to try to make you pay a couple $1,000s up front like the other folks in town are going to do. You can find all this and more at GameDayMen'sHealth.com. Mention Cube when you walk in. You save 10% on any service that they offer. All that and more at GameDayMen'sHealth.com. All right, so tonight, 6:30, ESPN. You get the megacast of this game. I'll be doing some pre- and post-game radio for this game. But you get Penn State and Notre Dame. Two of the all-time historic programs in college football. What does it come down to? Ultimately, for me, Notre Dame has just found a way. And I think that there is a part of that that sort of stays with the team, and I think there's a part of that that grows with the team. We mentioned the turnovers. Notre Dame leads the nation. Points off turnovers. Notre Dame leads the nation. We've seen special teams in action. My only concern for Notre Dame is health. If you look at this defense and Howard Cross comes out, and now you're playing with basically two defensive tackles, if Xavier Watts is not 100%, if the tight end group, if the numbers get a little bit more thin there, would I have a little bit of a concern? Yes. Can you throw Jaggy Shaw in at tight end and be an extra blocker with him being now available, who was supposed to start at tackle before the season? Maybe. Jeremiah Love is a name that we haven't really mentioned a lot of today. What's the percentage of health is he of today? What's the percentage of health? Is he even going? What does that look like? Another major concern for me in this game for Notre Dame. But with how Riley Leonard operates, how this team operates, I do agree with what Greg said earlier. They're going to have to take and maybe hit a shot or two down the field. They have to stretch this defense because I think Penn State's going to sell out against the run and say, you're just not getting it. You're not. And that's where, going back to last week with Georgia, we talked about the intermediate throws, and that would be the difference in the game. Well, go look at the throws that Riley Leonard completed. That's where they were. And that's why they won that football game. So I think that special teams will lean Notre Dame in this game. The kicking woes in the middle of the season that were such a problem have now been repaired. And I think just how Marcus Freeman just oozes confidence coaching this football team. And even if Jeremiah Love's not able to go, I do think Jadarian Price is enough. I don't think that you're going to have a whole lot after him that's going to be able to give you too much more. Aeneas Williams can come in and offset things to a certain extent. But I think Notre Dame widens the surface. I think they go extra tight ends. I think they try to run the ball outside. And I think you'll see more gap scheme runs than you will zone runs. You saw more zone against Georgia. The gap scheme stuff, counter power. Penn State's had some issues with that. They don't always fit it correctly. And this is a jumpy defense. They'll try to swim around blocks. They'll try to rip through blocks. They'll try to jump across blocks. And oftentimes that gets them in trouble. I think that opens up a little bit of success for the Notre Dame rushing attack. And then the one thing also, I feel like, not the one thing, now I've said 3 one things that we haven't mentioned today. Another thing that we haven't mentioned today is a Notre Dame pass rush. Now, you got to slow down Singleton and Allen first. And those two both over 1,000 yards this year. Not many teams offer that up. But R.J. Oben, Bryce Young, Tulialamaka, I think, and when Jalen Sneed comes down off the edge, they can get to the quarterback. And if Al Golden needs to dial up a couple of pressures and stunts to be able to do it, that also works in their benefit. I think that they neutralize Tyler Warren just a bit. Xavier Watts will be a big part of that. Extra bodies down against the run, force Drew Aller into a mistake. I think Notre Dame wins, and I think it's a low-scoring game. I would absolutely hammer the under in this game, just because I don't think that I don't see any path for these teams to be both putting up, 26 points, 31 points. This is not going to happen. So that's my thought on it. I'm going to stay with Notre Dame. I think they find a way to get this win. I think they grind it out. Some people will come on the show tomorrow morning and tweet in. You'll hear other shows talking about it was an ugly game and not an enjoyable game. But for old school folks like me, I think it's going to be one that you're absolutely going to love. And I'll enjoy every part of it if it ends up being that way. For you, John, where are you going with this game tonight? How does it turn out? Who gets the win?
I think Notre Dame does win the game. I do think you're right in that it plays under. I think more so I would look at the 1 points because I do think that Notre Dame a turnover, like one small, tiny little mistake is just going to blow everything up. I think it's going to play out eerily similar to the Georgia game in that both teams were just trading blows back and forth. Everything seemed fine. And then one tiny little switch flipped. And then Notre Dame got the fumble. They got in the was riding high. They kicked take the opening kickoff back. And then at that point, that was all she wrote because going to be able to come back. I think it plays out similarly this way because I think both teams are so close that one tiny mistake is just going to be glaring. And I think Penn State makes it. And I feel bad for James Franklin because I think overall everyone's going to play well, but I think Notre Dame enough, sounds bad, I know, but English-wise, but I think Notre Dame will just have enough to get by and ultimately get this game.
Damian, which way?
I think Notre Dame gets it. I think Riley into how Notre Dame finds a way. Kind of similar. Jeremiah Love isn't at 100%. Riley Leonard's going to have to utilize his legs a little bit more. As far as throwing the ball, I think Notre Dame wins a close one.
There it is. We will be back tomorrow morning live to break it all down for you. We'll tell you what it was like inside the Orange Bowl, give you all those feels, all those thoughts on that one, and begin to break down Texas, Ohio State in the second semifinal of this year's inaugural 12-team college football playoff. You're going to get a ton more college football talk from Three Man Front. Those guys are going to continue to break it down, give you breaking news that's coming your way as well, talk some Alabama hoops, and then Paul Feinbaum will be there after that. Keep it locked right here on Jocks 94.5